Welcome to Heart to Heart. I'm your host, Pastor Gia Clinton, and tonight we are welcoming our very special guest. Tonight we're welcoming our very special guest, writer, executive producer, Mr. Ken Jenkins, and he is the author and producer of A Heart That Forgives 1 and 2. Very excellent films. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you for having me.
And yes, that song you're hearing in the background playing is none other than Miss Inga Rose playing Love Me When It's Hard, which is tonight's topic. And Ken and I are going to dare to tackle it together. As you know, A Heart to Heart is a podcast which features a journey of self-discovery that is your partner. And the Bible says that the two become one flesh. So it is a journey because you are not only learning about yourself, but you're learning about ways to please your partner and how your partner works. So that's what makes this so much fun, and the discussion. And as you can see, Pastor Gia is without her coffee tonight. I've been told I have to cut down.
Never too much coffee.
You can never have too much.
Never have too much coffee.
So when we think about relationships, weathering storms, and you think about your partner, and you think about how hard it is to maintain a relationship when you're going through the courtship process, I mean, it has its ups and downs, but nothing is more difficult when you make that journey and that decision to come together and be one flesh. And I think that is okay, we're connecting to our GCPR radio network. Welcome, guys. If you're joining us, our featured guest tonight is Mr. Ken Jenkins. He is the writer and executive producer of A Heart That Forgives for our radio listeners. It is going to be very exciting. We are talking about loving someone when it's hard. How do you love a partner when it's hard? And so we're going to dive into that discussion, and the music that is playing in the background is none other than Miss Inga Rose, who wrote the song Love Me When It's Hard. So now you're all caught up, join right in, family. So Ken, I was saying earlier that it is so easy. The courtship process makes it all easy, and it's fun and it's romantic, and you have that bliss. Not that you don't have problems during the courtship, because there are problems, but it always seems like it's harder when two people are trying to become one. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that it can become harder based on what your agenda is going in. If your agenda is to find someone to which you can serve, as I believe God has intended for us to do, then it can be easier. If you're going in with an agenda in which you're trying to get out of something, the most you can get out of it without seeking to serve, then it's going to be difficult. We just have to go in with that mindset that I'm going to serve. That's what God would call me to do. I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to serve, because the goal is ultimately to be equally yoked. At least I think. Maybe I'm a little old school, but I'm single, so I'm not dating just to be dating. I'm dating with an intention that the person I find is going to be my wife at some point.
So I think that, and your mic is a little low, Ken. Alexa, turn off the music. She's my co-pilot. I think that most people, I would say women in particular, find it easy during the courtship because you can be who you want to be, and you're not really dealing with um, your partner. I think we go into it with the mindset as women that we want this guy. We see a guy, we want him, and we're going to be whatever he needs. You know, like that Eddie Murphy movie Coming to America, remember that? And he asked her, he said, well, what do you like? And she says, whatever you like. He says, where would you like to go? Wherever you want to go. And I don't know how authentic that is in a relationship. And I don't know how realistic that is, because it seems that, when you get the guy, it's like, oh, I can relax now. He's mine. Now I can turn into Ursula the sea witch. And many men find themselves waking up to a woman that they didn't know they were dating. Do you find that to be true? Do you hear that in your conversations with a lot of men? Are like,
Um, I can only speak to my experiences. I always am cautious not to try to throw an umbrella over guys in general. Even though
okay.
I did give you some guy laws the other night, and you
Yes, you did, and I
promised
appreciate
you
those
weren't going
tips.
to tell anyone that I did. But I can't get away from the sense that it all boils down to what the intention is going in. Whether it's the guy that you've always dreamed of that you want, and all of a sudden you finally got him. If getting him is the goal, if getting him is the intention, probably going to find that relationship falling short in a lot of other ways. But if serving is the intention, if honoring God through what I do for this woman that He's given me, is if that's the intention, then I think you set yourself up for just a such a better experience.
Hmm. So when you say, when we talk about getting the guy, if getting the guy is your goal, I don't. People that go in with that agenda, it always seems like they don't think beyond getting. It's like when they get him, then what do you do with him? How do you make this work? Now you're in it. You know. Oftentimes, I think that women don't date with a purpose. We see a guy, he's good looking, um, you know, uh, and then they just kind of, okay, well, this is what I want, and I'm going to discover what he wants, and I want him. Nothing wrong with wanting him, but why do you want him? I mean, it has to be more than just he's a absolute gorgeous hunk of man candy. He's got to be more than that. You've heard that phrase before. It's got to be more than just that. It's got to be some compatibility, and like you're saying, like you date with a purpose. It's got to be like, you know, we want to have 2.5 kids and a dog. Well, you better find out if he wants a dog. Maybe he's allergic. And I don't think women think about that. They're so excited about the idea of getting a husband that we don't realize that there's work involved. There's always work involved. And it gets hard. You know what storms are like. We've both been married, and we know that, there are rough times, especially that first year. It's like, because the two are really merging and personalities are at war, and it can be difficult. Would you say that um, men who have to fight to love in difficult times have a better odds of staying in the relationship versus a man that says, you know what, this is just, I'm out. I can't. I can't deal with this.
I think it's important to level set that it's a relationship, which means that there are more than one hearts, minds, souls, spirits, bodies coming together. So it's not just about the ladies, right? It's not just about the ladies wanting and getting and then changing. The men do the same thing. We're probably just as fickle-hearted as most women, even though we won't readily admit to that. But I think you get to a certain point in life where you realize that peace that you have or that surpasses all understanding is more important than anything else. And you want someone that's going to build that peace with you, whether whether you're a woman wanting a man or a man wanting a woman. You've got to go in with the idea that I'm going in to serve God through this relationship, that I'm not going in to get these boxes checked off, that I'm not. Yes, you have your attractions, right? I'm not foolhardy.
Right.
Like, you like a certain height, a certain color, a certain body type. I mean, you do like that. Um,
Right.
but once you get past that, the infatuation of the physical, you have to have an intention of serving God through this relationship, because He's the one that created marriage. And we are talking about marriage, right? We're not talking about
We're not
religion.
talking about the Shaq
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah. He
That's not
created.
as hard as marriage.
Yeah, it can be even harder because you get people that live together under
Right.
the guise of being married, but not under the
Right.
under the godly ordainment and protection of being married. So their expectations are all out of whack. But that's a whole nother story. I think you have to have an idea and a heart for serving, and not to plug the movie per se, but forgiveness is huge where that's concerned, because the only perfect one that we've ever known or experienced, we know who that is, and it's not going to be the woman that I married. She's not going to be perfect. I want to see her in those times where she's not perfect. I want to know that she has the capacity to forgive me, as I'm going to work on having the capacity to forgive her. And that's where the godly intention comes in. Because if we have that intention of servitude, then it becomes easier to forgive. It becomes easier to adjust. It becomes easier to communicate. All those things that go along with making up, the couple, the equally yoked couple, the one flesh, I think comes from this spirit of serving. Um, when I pick, when God picks for me, let me not get in His way.
Are you going to blame him now?
But, no,
He's giving you free will.
He is giving me free will. For me, it's not a blame; it's actually a comfort in that I'm not having to meet anyone's standard. God will communicate to me who is for me, and she will be the one that is being prepared for me, even at this moment, and me for her. At this moment. But going in with that mindset that I'm going to honor God by how I treat you, love you, care for you, provide for you, protect you, respect you. I'm going to do all that in honor of God. Then what comes your way is going to be icing on the cake.
Hmm. Okay. Well, what do you say to the couple that says, yeah, but Brother Ken, we've been married for like 4 years and it's been really rough, and we've had job loss and illness, and we've had this and that, and our house burned down, and I just really hate his guts right now, and I'm just so angry because this is not the fairy tale I wanted, and he's upset and I'm upset, but how do we weather this? How do we get past all of this calamity that has now befallen us, and our happily ever after looks so far in the distance? Now we've got to work this out. How do I love this man when it is hard? It's hard when he comes home grumpy, he has a job he hates, you know our house burned down and we had to stay at a hotel for 6 months, and you know uh you know we've got termites, and life has happened, and we've got a baby on the way, or not on the way. We've been trying for several years and can't get pregnant. There are a lot of things that Satan brings into a relationship, pitfalls that hit a relationship and hit it hard. Satan is an ancient devil, and he's very practiced in destroying relationships. But I do believe what you're saying is correct. It does break the communication, and the love has to be there. Like if you are if you're close in the beginning, and as if you're joining us, we are talking now about marriage. And for those of you that are living together, this is not a slight against you. In fact, what you hear we have to say, you might not want to do. Might be, you know what, hold please. We're not going to do this. But we're talking about relationships that have to build, and people who have to grow together through adversity, through the storm. It's not easy it's easy to love somebody when everything is great. When the weather's sunny, you're in Florida and you have beautiful weather. But when that typhoon comes in there, that hurricane, and it brings a level of destruction, um, I think the love becomes really hard. What do you think? I think when it gets real.
Um, so I'm a helpless romantic, right? So I tend to speak out of the ideal environment that I ultimately believe God has for me. Um, and hopefully you'll have me back on the show after this.
Oh, I will absolutely.
That I think the operative part of what you just communicated was the phrase or the sentence, the fantasy that I wanted.
Yes, exactly.
I think that too many of us, men and women alike, go into relationships trying to get out of it something that we want, something that we never had, or something that we feel will make us better.
Mm-hmm. True.
We don't go into relationships for the most part. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist. I don't play one on TV. I was married for a number of years. I think a lot of us go into relationships looking for the things that we can get out of it. This box that can be checked. He has everything except for this one quality. And then, okay, let me throw it all away for this one thing, right? Like, and men and women alike. It has to be a mindset of servitude. Like, God gave his only begotten son for us, and Jesus served when he was on this earth. Our job has to be as men, and I can only speak for men, to serve God through how we love our women, how we provide for and take care of our women. It's our responsibility. I think we had this discussion before about when things went down in the garden, who did God come looking for? Right? He didn't come looking for
Right.
Eve. He came looking for Adam, not because Adam was in charge, but because Adam had the responsibility. And too many times we as men shuck our responsibility to understand I need to love my wife truly as God loved me. And that means I need to serve her. That means if things are tough, then I need to figure out a way to make it not so tough for her. If things get hard, if the house burns down, then I need to, with her help, figure out a way to build another one or get another one or whatever it needs to do, whatever I need to do. I'm not trying to sound like I live in this fake utopia. We just
Well,
have
sounding good so far.
and so just as kind of a disclaimer, I'm probably hard on the guys, right? Because I'm hard on myself. So, if someone were to come with me and, as a guy and start making excuses about something, I'd probably, tell them, bro, this is not the place you want to come for that because we as men have a responsibility to stand up, be responsible, answer the call that God has given us to be all that we need to be to the woman. With that being said, the woman the woman should, I'm not going to say has to, the woman should hopefully also have the mindset of servitude, knowing that we're going to love her based on how she makes us feel about ourselves, and or the opposite, how bad she makes us feel about ourselves.
Yeah.
Be available to support him, to help him grow, to put him in positions where he can turn the lights on, he can mow the grass, he can get the groceries, help him be in those positions. Now, if he's sitting around playing, PlayStation all day and not accepting those responsibilities, that's another.
Right.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about a man who accepts the responsibilities to serve God through the love he has for the woman that he has given him, given him, and that means not coming to the table with agendas, not coming in saying the fantasy I wanted, but God, what do you want for me? Who do you want for me? Uh, I've been single for the last, gosh, 15 years. And not that I haven't wanted to or haven't had opportunities to. Um, for whatever reason, I realized God did not choose that person for me in that moment. And so
Right.
getting out of his way at this point. I messed it up too much. So I'm getting out of his way and I'm allowing him to prepare me for and her for me.
Well, interestingly enough, I find that, as a therapist, I find that with younger couples that, are young, they're fresh out of college and they get married and, they've got that whole fairy tale thing going on. The woman has been, in church and she's been praying for a husband. And, and I sit and listen to the descriptions. Well, Pastor, I'm like, well, what do you want in a husband? Well, Pastor G, I just want a man that, I want him to be well built. I want him to fly in on a winged horse Pegasus. And I want him to, have a lot of money, make six figures. And I want him to be, just like Fabio. I'm dating myself. Nobody knows who Fabio is in this generation. I don't know who the muscle guy is anymore. Um,
Right?
um,
Johnson, right? That's who
who is it now?
Rock with Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, The Rock, is he still in? I thought he was a Gen X. No, what Gen Z? Well, what are we? We're Xers. So
Right.
I don't know what the Gen Z crowd likes, um, but it seems that sitting in church, listening to them when they come to you talking about wanting to get married, and they want you to pray for them to get a husband, and they're young and they're bright eyed and bushy tailed, and the first thing I ask is, what happens if you marry this guy and God forbid, he can't make six figures anymore? Well, why wouldn't he be able to make six figures? I mean, like if he loses his job, or then you should see the look on their face, like, what? Yeah, like what if he can't make six figures? What if he gets in there, the company folds, and you guys are newly married, and now you're faced with the reality of four figures, or instead of six, or like he doesn't have that kind of money. Oh, oh, I see. Yeah, well, what do you do? Who's going to pay the mortgage? Like there are so many things that go into being married and being a team, that if you are, like you said, marrying someone with an agenda, with superficial means, or he's got to have this, and he's got to have green eyes instead of blue, or he's got to have blue eyes instead of whatever, or brown eyes, or I'm really being specific to God about what I want. But what you're not understanding, young women, you're not understanding that when you get married, the two become one. And when they become one, there are things that go on, like people lose jobs, people become sick. There's tragedy that happens, car accidents or God knows what. And, um, then you have to deal with it. What if you marry this stud muffin and all of a sudden something happens, and he's in a wheelchair, you know, um, or he dies suddenly. I knew a couple that had been married 2 years. They were young. I think they were like 28, 29. He died in church. Not my church, thank God, but I mean, he did die in church. you know, they were worshiping God. They were only married like 2.5 years, and he dropped dead in church. He had an aneurysm, young guy. So it took her some time to get over that. She cried all the time. And, she's, Pastor G, I'll never love anybody else again. And I just can't. And I won't. I said, but you will, because he would want you to go on. He would want that. So I think that when young people get married, they don't consider that. or they, when you're young, you feel invincible. Nothing bad could ever happen to you, or nothing, no, he's not going to lose his job. I'm not going to lose my job. But guess what? People lose jobs. I mean, right now we've had like 3 shutdowns. People are out of work. And it puts a strain on the marriage. It puts a strain on the family. And if you don't have that communication, you're going to begin to take it out on each other because you're irritated. You ever hear the phrase, you hurt the one you love? You do. So what do you say to the young couple that, they're getting married and they're not considering hard times because they don't think hard times exist because they're in love?
Well, I think so. First of all, I think that it's normal, right? When you're young and you're um, upcoming, so to speak, you're in your early adulthood and life is just ahead of you. It's kind of normal for you to have that feeling of, it's never going to end, or, it's not going to affect me because, the world is your oyster. So that's normal. It's not like, people are going down the wrong path if they have that mindset. It's just how you adjust to that mindset and find balance as life goes forward. I think one of the things that young people struggle with, and it's probably due a lot to our generation not doing
Yeah.
a better job in passing on some of the godly truths. That is the whole idea of becoming one flesh, right? Sacrificing, blending, meshing, um, incorporating. We live in such a what I call this hyper individualistic, selfish society that we tend not to see beyond our own wants and our needs. And if this thing doesn't match what I want, then I'm going to move on to something different. And so we've lost that concept of understanding marriage is meant for us to become that one flesh, to mold, to merge into one. Um, I think, also that we have to make sure that we're passing on to them an understanding of life, and that life is going to have its challenges, and that you're never going to have everything the best. You're never going to have everything the worst. It's going to be the path that God has put you on.
Right.
And
I agree.
you have to find the balance, right? I learned later in life, probably later than I would have liked to, that life is about balance. It's about understanding there are going to be peaks and valleys. But how do you maintain that balance between those peaks and in those valleys? I think that people, um, if they struggle with what to do, they will end up doing what they intended to do. I know I kind of went in circles with that.
But I like the way you put it because I think that, Paul said, the good that I would do, I don't do. The evil I will not to do, that I practice. So we're
Exactly.
not only at war with doing the right thing, and
Hmm.
but we struggle with, doing the wrong thing. We struggle with the urge to do the wrong thing. And I think you're right in that we have spoiled Gen Zs. And, because our generation struggled, our parents' generation, the boomers, they struggled. And so we didn't struggle as much as the boomers because the boomers paved way for us. And so we determined when our kids were born that we were going to make it easier for them. They don't know what it's like to have tuna casserole, or I don't even think my kids know what casseroles are anymore. Um, I think that we grew up in a generation where we had to work for things. They have more of a microwave kind of generation. When we were younger, we had to work. We had to, it was hard. We read books and we went to the libraries. And so now everything is on a tablet. They don't even talk to each other. I think the weirdest thing I'd seen, my grandson now has a girlfriend and he's so cute and she's cute and they're just cute together. They're just really cutesies. And they're teenagers. And so they'll sit next to each other and just text each other. I mean, I'm assuming they're talking to each other, but it's just a weird, like, what? Why not just talk to each other? Oh, well, we're just texting each other. but you're sitting next to each other. It's just like the weirdest thing. Or they didn't, that group didn't play outside, because now we have this ring where they're snatching little kids and stuff, and they didn't want us when we were little. So, they played video games and they found ways of entertaining themselves, whereas our generation didn't have it that way. We had to work for everything. We worked, I worked at Burger King when I was young, and then I worked for a law firm. Then I worked for the city's law firm, So it was kind of like we were introduced to work because our parents understood that that was how it was. If your mom and dad was in the household, those of us that were blessed to have mom and dads, it was difficult. You know, dad worked. They both worked. In my generation, they had opposite schedules, and because dad wanted to make sure that somebody was home with the kids, and and so they learned to work as a team. Whereas in this generation, I find that it is not as prevalent. We don't see the struggle. We don't see, the saying, a family that prays together stays together. We see more of the selfishness. The Bible talks about the love of many waxing cold, and you see less romance. You see, more of, this is what I want. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's never, babe, what are we going to do? I find that I watch my brothers there. They have these amazing wives and they have these amazing relationships. My younger brother has been married over 20 years. My older brother is divorced, but he is engaged now. And he and Kia are just a wonderful match, because they've learned that we have to talk to each other. And when stuff gets difficult, we come together and solve a problem versus, complaining. I mean, I can't speak for men, but although I have, since I've been counseling, I've gotten couples that have come, and he'll sit and he'll whine about what she's not doing. She'll whine about what he's not doing. And I ask a simple question. Well, have you talked about it? Not talk at each other, not take strikes at each other, but talk to each other, communicate. Oh, well, I mean, he should know what I'm thinking. No, what are you texting it to him? Like, how is he going to know? Like, how is that a thing? No one knows what you were thinking. So I find that their generation they don't seem to be equipped. Not that ours was so perfect, but I mean, they seem to be less able to communicate and figure out what each other wants versus the older generation.
Right. Well, first of all, who has grandkids? You? Of course not.
The grandson. He is so adorable. Oh, not to my little one. I have two grandsons. My smaller one, my baby grandson, he also has a girlfriend. Yes, I was really shocked. Very jealous. He held her hand on the school trip and everything, right in front of me. Such a little gentleman.
It's good. It's good. Somebody's teaching them right. But I think the key to what you're saying is, when you say they haven't learned, um, when someone hasn't learned, it's because someone hasn't taught.
Yeah,
We
agreed.
we have not uh, done a good enough job in teaching, sharing, preparing um, the next generation for all of the challenges of life, including one of the most important decisions that any young person is going to make, and that is who they choose as a spouse, right? Who they choose to ride and live. I don't like that other saying, so I say ride
Right.
and live. That's what I say. We haven't taught them well enough, and a lot of times it's not an intentional thing. We didn't intentionally not want to teach. Sometimes we didn't know, as you said and alluded to. We were latchkey kids, for the
Yeah.
part. I know that I was. So, we didn't always learn some of the things, even though we had a different sense of value and a different contextual understanding of behaviors and relationships. and so forth. I just think that the key is equipping them to understand that life is about balance. It's about finding the balance between what you desire and what God has for you. You can't. I don't think you can move forward by saying He doesn't have or come in this box that I want Him to come in. What did you call it? The stud muffin. That's kind of
Yes.
dating yourself a little bit there.
Right. Really dating myself.
Yeah, I remember when right before I got married in the premarital counseling that I went to, the pastor we had made it a point to drive it home with us that there are going to be ebbs and flows in the marriage. The way that you enter the marriage, financially, emotionally, spiritually, those things at some point are going to flip. And you have to be ready for that and have to understand that. And being available to what God has for you allows you to manage those flips, those ebbs and flows, those peaks and valleys of that roller coaster called marriage. I remember when I first got married, my wife was making 4 times as much as me.
Wow.
It was really, I was really going through some, emotional, egotistical kind of man stuff. And then when things flipped, not by intention, but just by the path that we were on, and I ended up being the primary breadwinner. Uh,
Nice.
I realized, you know what? It's just about finding that balance and understanding that God has me on this path, and I can't let myself get too high, too low. As long as I'm serving Him, He's going to work it all out. God says, if I took care of the birds, that fly around aimlessly in this world, what makes you think I'm not going to take care of and prepare you, whom I love so much that I gave my son for you? And if we believe in that and have faith that if we take care of the little things, if we serve Him in how we're approaching our relationships, if we move in a way that's pleasing to God, then everything is going to work itself out somehow, some way, through the ebbs and flows, through the ups and downs, through the layoffs, through the pandemics, through all of the things that, when you think about this young generation and what they've experienced in their lifetime.
I know. Well,
uh,
we didn't experience a pandemic, but they did. I mean,
did, not only did not we experience a pandemic, but we did not experience, financial crashes.
oh, I know.
Right? We didn't experience the social technology boom that they experienced. I mean, just think about it. And maybe you won't admit to it, but I'll readily admit to it. I remember days when we didn't have a microwave.
Yeah, my dad had the soup warmer. Soup warmer. So
If you had a microwave and you were the jack,
really rich.
yeah, you moving on up, so to speak. So,
Right.
this younger generation doesn't have that kind of active memory of those things. So it's up to us to try to teach them, give them what we believe God has allowed us to have a testimony of, and just trust that at some point they're going to go, aha.
They'll
I
have the
remember,
aha moments.
yeah, I remember what Daddy said. I remember what Mama said. At some point, they're going to have that aha moment. But if we want to sit them down in front of the TV because we want to have 10 minutes of peace or 20 minutes of peace, and or give them our cell phones because we want them to stay quiet, um, we can't complain very much if their attention spans are low, if they're I called it, this hyper individualistic idea, selfishness, if that becomes heightened because they're always in environments where they have to entertain themselves, they have to educate themselves, they have to teach themselves. Um, we can't complain when that becomes the cycle that is being lived out. And I think it portrays itself in no other more impactful ways than in relationships and in this idea of marriage and becoming one flesh.
I think that's true. I definitely agree with that. I do think too, um, we have done a lot of spoiling with the Z's, and I feel bad because it's like, oh my gosh, if the internet goes down, Ken, I'm telling you, right now, we have
Well,
kids trying to jump off a bridge.
we don't want to go down right now
They're
because
gonna lose their mind.
we're in the middle of this fantastic conversation. So we don't want to go down right now. But
No, not right now. Maybe after the show, but I'm just saying they don't read. They don't. Well, they do on these little tablets, but they don't. They've lost the art of reading a book and being teleported into other places like we had, and they've lost the art of communication. Like I think we have a wonderful flow of communication because we know how. Rarely do you see the younger generation just sitting and communicating. They just won't do it. They don't understand the value of a good conversation because that's how you learn each other. And I find that when I'm in a counseling session, well, I've had some older ones that shock me too. But when I'm in a counseling session and I'm listening to a young couple and they're fighting and they're frustrated, immediately I know it's finances. That's the biggie. I know it's probably sex thrown in there somewhere. I know there's not an equal give and take in terms of attention. So I already know before they sit down some of the key issues. Then a breakdown of respect is a big one because there are no defined roles anymore. Like women are, taught that, we can do anything a man can do. Listen, that is not true. If someone breaks in that house and there is a burglar, I'm under the bed. Okay, honey, you got this. I'm gonna call. You got this, baby. I
yeah,
am
but
not going down to face a burglar.
see, so my feeling about that is that women have had to be that way because we've fallen down on the job. God said,
Okay.
"Where are you, Adam?" And when we finally spoke up, what's the first thing we do? Is we blame the woman.
The woman you gave me, that one right over there.
Lord, it wasn't my fault. It was her fault, right? So we've fallen down on the job. And so women, um, I think, for the most part, have had to be, the quote unquote the boss. Um,
Maybe, yeah.
had to be the provider, the protect. They've had to do these things, um, and so we as men have to manage our expectations as to why we run into certain behaviors or certain psychologies, and work within that to maybe adjust it to some extent by being the men we're supposed to be, by being who we are, by being consistent, by being trustworthy, by being integral. Um, so women in general don't feel that they have to do those things. I don't know many women that I've met that want to actively want to be the man of the house.
Hmm.
Now there are some, I will give you that. There are some who've grown up in an environment where that's
Hmm.
new because they were children,
Raised by strong women and,
women,
you
right? So
know,
yeah,
like Amazons.
yeah, I'm never going to say her, but I would like to think that if we as men kind of, man up, put on our big boy pants, and say, okay, God, what have you intended for me to do and be in this world, in this life you've given me? And I think if we continue to do that, regardless of the result that we get initially, then it'll eventually change. It didn't take, a day for it to get where it is, right? It happened over
Right.
generations of men being emasculated in various ways. You go all the way back
Yeah.
to slavery, um,
Yeah.
things like that. So it's not going to, be a light switch that flips in the other direction. That's where we have to, as men, just kind of stand up, put our blinders on to some respect, and say, okay, God, you say go, I'll go. If you don't say go, I'm not going. You say left, I'm going left. If you say be this person, I'm going to be. You say take the trash out, I'm going to take the trash out. Right? You say make sure she's comfortable when she comes home from a long day of work, I'm going to make sure she's comfortable. You say get her bath ready, I'm going to get her bath ready. right? Whatever you say I'm supposed to do as a man to breathe life into the woman that you've given me, God, I'm going to do it. Simple as that.
Because it is about the relationship. It isn't, I mean, when you're young, you think it's about the sex. The sex has to be good and it's got to be banging. I'm going to take pole dancing or whatever they're doing nowadays. It is not about the gymnastics. It is about the relationship, because sex without relationship is just sex. It's not about, it's got to be more about the time you spend together. Maybe cooking in the kitchen. Your wife's cooking, you go in there grabbing, grab her around the waist and just dance with her. You know what I mean? Put on a song, or there's got to be a connection, a heart connection that has to be made in order for you to feel like you want to weather the storm with this person. There's got to be a solid connection. Or, because I learned now that men and women, they take turns cooking dinner and all this, like they've really just done it. Or sometimes the guy just cooks. But then how do you show your appreciation? I think that there is a lot of role confusion. I talked to a gentleman who was talking about his divorce, and he was saying how, he got a housekeeper for his wife so that she didn't have to cook. But then she felt like he was taking her job away. Like, what? Don't threaten me with a good time. I cook I would love to have a and not have to cook. Yes. But I mean, but that is how she took it. Or if he decided to cook dinner, she would get angry and say, no, that's my job. I want to cook dinner. He said, but I cook too. I don't want your cooking. Or, it just seemed that there was just this whole confusion. Like she had a 6-figure job and he had a 4-figure job. So already you're coming into, and they're a Black couple. So already you're coming into it with the guy feeling maybe less. And maybe she doesn't know how to check that I'm the boss thing at the door. I think that, I'm a pastor and a therapist and all that. But when I get married, those coats or hats or whatever they are, they come off. When I come home, I'm just his lady. I'm his wife, his partner. And I don't think that they've learned how to do that anymore. Already you have a deficit when a Black couple gets together, especially the young ones, because their communication level is weird. They're already competitors. They're raised to be more competitors than partners. And that puts the relationship at a disadvantage. And then they say, I always taught at women's ministry, it doesn't matter. Color doesn't matter. You can find a partner in any color. I totally believe that. I believe that a Black woman can be with a white man, a Chinese man, an Asian man, a Hispanic man, an Indian man, an Arab man. I don't think it matters. I think it matters that the man loves her. I do think that when you talk about, I do find that with a Black couple, I do find a level of differences that I don't find with other couples. Like if I've got a mixed couple coming in, a Black woman with a Hispanic guy, I don't seem to get the same kind of push and pull, tug of war. And I think that has a lot to do with slavery. I think that has a lot to do with division. And so they're already going in with some difficulties because he's looking at his counterpart who's now making much more money than him. The question is, are you going to walk in humility and make it our money, which that's what I believe. We're going to have it in one pot, and we pay bills out of this pot. You've got your allowance, I've got mine. We put savings. It's the two become one. They're always preparing for a divorce. When they go into a marriage, oh no, I got to make sure I have my slush account. I got to make sure I have this. I'm like, well, why are you getting married? You're paying, what are you doing, people? So they already have a what is it? A catch-22? No, a contingency plan. There's always a contingency plan in place that I'm going to do here. I got my Swiss bank account or whatever I got, he doesn't know about. So when I'm ready to go, I'm going to go, not understanding that God is able to sustain a marriage with some work. It is. Even marriage coming in with deficits, the black and white situation, is it's going to have its challenges, but for the most part, they're making it work. But the black on black situation is where we're finding in the black community that there is a struggle to be with your own counterpart, your own, race. And it shouldn't be. And so not only does the church have a responsibility to teach that we have counterparts for a reason, we have, in other words, women have roles, men have roles. It is easier for some reason for her to submit to a different counterpart than it is to her African American counterpart. And there's a reason for that. There is division that's been sown generationally that we now have to combat. You know, they, ask, well, Pastor Gia, how do you feel about mixed couples? I love mixed couples. I love any couple. I love love. So whatever love that takes a form in, if it's a mixed couple or if it's a black couple or just a white couple or just a Hispanic couple, whatever way, whoever God has chosen for you or whoever you found, I'm happy, because you're now saying, I'm ready for marriage. The two are ready to become one flesh. We can do this. I think that marriage is hard in and of itself, but when you have couples coming in, knives out, I'm going to keep this knife in my back pocket just in case this doesn't work out. I'm going to make sure that I too have been single for some time since my divorce. I wanted to take my time and I had to really make an honest effort to wait on the Lord to get what I want versus what looks good on paper, what I think might be okay. I had to be honest about what I want and be willing to and patient enough to wait for what I'm asking God for versus, oh, well, there's a man shortage and there's, I'm just going to take what's left.
So
Or
can I,
you may inject.
so can I challenge you?
Yes, you can.
All right.
Please.
I challenge you out of love.
Yes.
But what I've heard repeatedly is waiting for what I'm telling God I want, as opposed to waiting for God to show me what He wants for me and who He wants for me. Now, it just may be semantics, so forgive me
Could be.
if I'm out of my lane. But I think that, and not just in our conversation between you and I, but I think that
Right.
for the most part, in male female dynamics, there is this sense of I'm going to tell God what I want, and I'm going to believe that because He gives me the desires of my heart, He's going to give me what I want, and that's His will. As opposed to, God, whoever you have for me, prepare me for her. Period. Prepare me for her if she is who you have for me. Because if she is who you have for me, she will be my peace. She will be my ride
I
on.
like that.
She,
Okay, I like
she
that.
will be my partner.
I do like that.
All those things that God has taught me how to identify in those desires that He's told me that He would give me. So God, prepare me for her and prepare her for me. Because I'm not the easiest person to live with, right? I'm probably, or I am the common denominator in the relationships that I've had that obviously have not gone as far as marriage. So I acknowledge that and I accept that. So,
Your mic's going up.
okay, that your music is actually getting louder. I don't know if you noticed that.
My music is getting louder? Oh.
Yeah. So maybe that has some bearing.
Hold on. Let's see.
I tell that to say not in a judgmental, but in a
Yeah, I didn't even, I forgot it was on.
seeking
Thank
wisdom.
you.
Oh, no worries, no worries. What I was saying was that I truly bring that up as a form of understanding, not in any way as a form of judgment to listen and to hear, because I'm guilty of it myself. Telling
Right.
God what I want and then justifying it as His will. Um, I just want what God wants for me. I know that sounds maybe unrealistic to some, but I know that I have spent too much time
Hmm.
getting out in front of God with respect to relationships.
Can I ask a question with regard to what God wants? So, would you say uh, God wants you to have someone who can communicate, who can love you tenderly, who can um, uh, be gentle and kind, or express emotion? I mean, I do love Star Trek, but nobody wants to marry Mr. Spock. You know, I just, I, or who can, so you have to be able to identify, like you said, it may be semantics. What I mean when I say what I tell God I want in a person, I want to be able to identify love in a person. I want to be able to identify that this person is tender. I want to be able to identify, because you have to know yourself in order to do that. If you know that you're emotional, and you know that you're kind of girly, and you know that you're not going to be out there chopping trees and stuff, then, obviously I'm not going to, probably not going to marry a farmer, because he's going to need a wife that's not going to want to get her nails done all the time. And, he's not, he's going to need someone that's going to be equipped and built to help him and used to that kind of way of life. But if you know that you are the kind of person that needs someone that can reassure you, most men take a woman that says, I need a man that can express emotion or affection. Oh, you need somebody to tell you they love you all the time. You need somebody to, well, that would be nice. I'm not saying all the time, but yeah, I would like that. um, so if you need those things, why would you then choose someone? Because it still comes down to choice. Because my dad used to say we could talk ourselves into anything or anyone. Why would you choose someone that can't express the love that you need? I'm not saying, he's got to be, a poet, but why would you marry someone if your temperament, your personality requires, some personalities require reassurance, you know, they'll, they can be task oriented people who, are driven. And so, oh, my husband's coming home, I'm going to make his favorite dinner. I'm going to make sure that he has this and this and this, because you want to please him. So if you get a counterpart that is not tuned into that, then he's going to come home. You're not even going to get a thank you, and that might be cute for a while, but then it's like, yeah, no, this is not working. You know, some people need reassurance in the relationship that I've pleased you, or or that you love them, or that hey, honey, you did a really good job with this. I think there isn't anything or any being on the planet that doesn't require nurture. And so a lot of women have come away from nurture because they feel like their nurture has been taken advantage of. I give, and he doesn't do anything, or he doesn't give that back. An equal give and take requires that nurture be given, and and nurture be received, and nurture be given back. Like it should be, like okay, example. You come home, hard day's work, you're tired, she sees that you're tired. Okay. So she's not then becoming selfish and want to tell you, well, honey, this, and this, and this, babe, I just need 5 minutes. I'm real tired. I need to rest for a minute. So she understands that. So the love that she feels for you it compels her to restrain herself, to treat you right, to, okay, well, let me give my husband some time. Let me go in here, start dinner. When he comes down, I know that, let him rest. You know what I mean? So it's not about selfishness. It's about equal give and take, being aware of someone else's needs. There are a lot of people out there that are single, but they don't care about anyone else's needs. It's only their needs. What can you do for me? Or, okay, that was yesterday. What about today? Like they're just selfish. And so if you don't want to pick up somebody like that, then you need to tell God, hey, Lord, you know my personality, you made me, you know what I need, and this is what I need in a partner. Help me to be able to identify that when it comes along. You know what I mean? And not to be fooled by somebody pretending to be that, just to get the girl or just to get the guy. So you have to be honest. If we're honest, there are parts of our personality that we don't address, that we're not in touch with. Some women don't understand that they are needy um, until after they get married, and they're only needy because this person isn't providing for their need, and they didn't realize that that was a thing. Oh, maybe it'll, because you tell yourself maybe it'll get better, or this isn't a big deal, I think I could live with that. But when you get married, it is magnified to the 10th power. So that's when it becomes hard, because now you got a partner that you really don't know, or that really isn't in tune with your needs, and that you can become that, but it's going to take some work, a lot of work, and probably some therapy, because now you have to unravel who this person truly is. So I kind of think that we have to be honest with God and say who we are, so that we can be in touch with what goes with that, what we need. Oh, I'm just going to go along with whatever he wants. But if her need isn't being fulfilled, eventually there's going to be an affair, or she's not going to be able to take it and she's going to want to leave, because now you're not compatible. Unless this guy is ready to rise to the occasion, seek the Lord, and try to become what she needs, they're not going to make it.
So I got a question for you.
Okay.
I love to ask questions.
And you're good at it.
For understanding, because
Mm-hmm.
there's one thing I know is I don't know it all. At what point, how do I position this question? At what point do we understand the omnipotence of God and truly say, I don't have to tell you, God, what it is that I need, because you know. And it's going to show itself through those things that bring me what's equivalent to the love that you have for me. Peace, understanding, commitment, communication.
Right.
I don't have to tell you, God, I need this person to. God knows what it is that I need. So what I'm looking for is simply those things that God says love should be: patient, kind,
Long suffering,
suffering,
keeps
not
no record of wrong.
record of wrong, and He's going to reveal
Right.
those things that are going to emphasize the love that He has put in me. I don't have to tell Him I need this and I need that. And yes, you everyone has their desires. Everyone has their proclivities and the things that they like. And I'm not trying to sound naive, but at one point, do we just say, God, you know all, and no matter what I ask you or what I tell you, you know what's best for me. And who you prepare for me, you're going to reveal to me through the things that you say love is.
Sorry.
Is that like the closing music?
No. People always want to call me when I'm on the air. I don't know whether they have questions or if they
That's not the
stop
rap
it.
music. Wrap it up. Wrap it up. And they start playing the music during
And
that.
I start call. Well, that's I think it's Tchaikovsky, or I'm not sure. I like
Yeah.
classical music. So I okay. So I think that
So
I
tell
hear
me,
what you're saying, but I think it's more important for us to be in tune with who we are. so that you can recognize when God is sending something versus when he's not. So if
Ex-
you're not in tune with what you want, then you're not going to recognize it. You could have the greatest guy on the planet, but if you don't know what your needs are, and you're not in tune with who you are as a woman, you're not going to recognize him. He's going to walk right by, like, okay,
do you think
because you don't know.
do you think that God knows what your needs are?
I believe he does, but I also believe that we have to be in touch with who we are. We have to know what our needs are too.
Absolutely.
Now, a person, it was like 2 weeks ago, asked me, "Do I believe in love at first sight?" And I didn't quite know how to answer that. Like, yes and no. But I do think it's possible for people to meet and just instantly connect, an instant attraction, an instant connection, drawn to a draw that they can't explain, almost like a kismet kind of thing. I have heard it, I have seen it, and I believe that that is possible. Does it happen for everyone? No, but I do believe that there is a person out there that you can connect with on many levels and not even understand why. You know, they're familiar. There's a kindredness about you with this person. That does happen, and those marriages tend to last. You know, they do last. But I think that the core reason why you can't love a person when it's hard is because you haven't learned to love yourself. If you're not in tune with who you are and you're broken, you can't bring that to a marriage and expect, well, he's going to heal my. You ever hear somebody say something like, he's going to heal my brokenness? The only one that can heal your brokenness is God.
Is God.
He can understand your brokenness. I mean, maybe he can empathize with it, but true healing is going to come from the Lord. And I believe that we kind of confuse it because, we get these little cute sayings and it kind of sticks with us. There's this one, women were saying, talking about their truth. I don't believe in your truth or my truth. There is only one truth, and that's the divine truth. It's either you're telling the truth or you're telling a lie.
Right.
A truth sprinkled with a lie is still a lie. So I think that we have to stand on what is right. And what is right is, for us to have a relationship and fellowship with the Lord to the point where he gives you an understanding of who you are. If you don't know who you are, then how do you expect this person to recognize who you are?
Absolutely.
He's looking at you to tell him, okay, well, who are you? I haven't figured that out yet. I'm still working on this, but when I figure out who I am, I'm going to get back to you. No, you need to know who you are going into a relationship. There are people with identity issues and color issues and all kinds of psychological issues that need to be worked out before you unleash all of this nonsense on a spouse.
So
I think that that's fair.
What would be the process, in your opinion, of someone getting to that point where they understand who they are?
I think the first thing a person needs to do is to keep a journal. I keep a journal. I think that the important thing is that you keep a journal, you write the vision down, make it plain. You need to write down your feelings. You need to be able to articulate, not that God doesn't know your feelings. I mean, he knows, he made you, he formed you in your mother's womb, but you need to be in touch with how you are feeling. And, I recommend men keep a journal. Put it up. You don't want your wife to find it, but that could be problematic. But I think that you have to be in touch with who you are. I went to work today, Lord, and this happened and that happened, and I'm upset. But if you suppress feelings and emotions and you're not in touch with them or in tune with them, you find yourself encased in a wall of, just bitterness or just anger or you're just actually walled yourself off from emotions and you don't know how to express them. And when you're not in touch with your emotions, I'm sorry, that makes serial killers. Just saying. You have to be in touch with who you are. You should know if God made you fearfully and wonderfully made, you should know how you're made. It's not wrong to understand why you feel the way you do. I why do I feel this way? You ever hear people say, why do I feel this way? If you don't understand why you feel this way, don't look at God and say, why doesn't he understand me? You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. You don't even know why you're doing it. So
Mhm.
you're expecting God to send you a spouse to, uh, for the most part, dissect you, understand you, when that should have been done when you enter. You need to have an understanding of who you are. So no one can take that away from you. No one can, oh, well, I know you. Really? Because I don't know me. What am I like? No one should be able to tell you who you are.
Mhm.
God has given us the unique ability to go within and to understand ourselves. It takes time, it takes patience with yourself, but you have people out there that don't like themselves. They don't like their own company. They don't like their thought process. They look in the mirror and they see the sea witch, they see Ursula, or they see, they it's psychological. And when you are not in tune with those things, some of it comes from childhood. The things that you go through in childhood will shape the person that you become. Sir William Wallace said, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. So whoever rocked that cradle or not is going to be responsible in part for the person that you've become. When I deal with people who have gone through abuse and sexual abuse and, you know, um, all kinds of abuse, drug addiction, or, I went through abuse when I was a child and I was beaten, I was this, I was that. Okay, all right. Yeah, okay, so you endured a hardship. Yes, but who we are, what we do next is all you. And it matters to God who you become. It determines who you become. For instance, if you got a guy who went through sexual abuse as a child, who he decides to be after that is on him. How he decides to deal with that. No one deserves trauma, no one deserves abuse, but not everybody becomes an abuser.
Mhm.
Or I saw my father beat my mom and he beat me, so that's why I beat my wife. How many times I heard that? Like, so that's a thing for you then. My father beat me, so I'm going to punish someone else. So that's where these little nuances come into play in a marriage. You could have someone that comes into a marriage that may check all the boxes for you, but may have a whole lot of internal struggle going on. And if you're not in tune with it and she's not in tune with it, then you don't know what's going on. You don't know who you're going to come home to from one moment to the next because you don't know what her triggers are. And that's what makes love hard.
So, what am I putting down in my journal?
That's easy. So, in your journal, you want to put down things like, um, okay, let's start with something simple. We're going to talk about our day. You may say, Lord, thank you for getting me through this day. I went through this, this, and this. You brought me through it. I was unhappy about this, but I'm going to give this matter to you. You're going to have to. So you'll find that in talking to the Lord and in journaling, it'll help you it helps you stay in touch with who you are. Or, Lord, I had this and I went out on this date and I like this, and this, but this happened and I was really upset. So now you understand that there's a conversation going on between you and God, a dialogue that, yes, he was there. Yes, he saw what happened. Yes, he knows you're upset. But now you're saying to God, I'm in tune with why I'm upset. I know what made me unhappy. I know, you know, why I'm unhappy. A lot of times when children are born, their personalities emerge, and it may not be in keeping with who our parents are. You have 4 children, they're going to all be different. But parents, when they raise their children, they have a cookie cutter as to how we want you to be. Now, that seldom works out because they're all going to be different. But if you find that you have a child that you've suppressed who this child is meant to be, they may not come to know who they are until they're well in their 50s, well in their 40s or 30s. Because what has happened to them is that their true personality has never emerged. So they're not in tune with who they are. And this is based on maybe based on what the parent sees. Sometimes a parent will see themselves in a child and not like it. And so that's the kid they're hard on. You're just like your father. No, that's not what it is. They're really just like you. And you see something about yourself that you didn't like. And now you're recognizing it in that child and it triggers you. So then you're hard on this child unnecessarily. Instead of reasoning with the child and say, you know what, you're a lot like me. I'm nothing like you. Unfortunately, though, those chromosomes did slip in there and you are like me. And guess what? This is how I had to handle things. Maybe having an understanding of yourself will help you recognize when you see yourself in your children. You know what I mean? Maybe having an understanding of your emotions, you find that things can't trigger you as easily because you're in touch with who you are. I know what my triggers are. Okay. I like chocolate. That's a trigger. Do not bring that home. You have to be in touch with what you like. Like, for instance, childhood trauma. When I was, maybe 5, I was in kindergarten, I think. We had a horrible storm, and I remember the water coming like up to my like waist. I was soaking wet. It was just horrible. And I remember my uncle who used to walk me to school. He's maybe like 5 or 6 years older than me. And so lightning, thundering, the whole thing, the sky went dark, and he let go of my hand when I was little. And it was a crowd. People were pushing, trying to get home. And I got lost in the storm, and I clutched under a tree. And I was hovering under a tree, and this lady found me, and she's a Caucasian lady. She was so sweet. And she says, I was shivering and scared. And she was scared I was going to get struck by lightning. So she took me into the store, and she says, are you okay? And I said, I want my mom. I'm 5. She says, well, luckily I knew my phone number, and she called my mom, and my mom came around and got me. And, I was scared that, I was left by myself. So at 5, it's traumatizing. You're in a storm, you're being pushed around by people. The one person that you trust has let go of your hand and just left you. I have no idea what he said to my mom when I got home, when he got home. But I know that for me, that was like a traumatizing experience. So growing up, fast forward, whenever there's a thunderstorm, I'm terrified. And I didn't realize why. I would just freak completely out. Shivering and like, oh my God. And it wasn't until I started journaling that I realized that terrible fear of storms came from a childhood trauma when I was 5. Now, thank God that lady found me, and brought me in a store. And I often say a prayer for her family. She was just a sweet lady, and she says, don't worry. If your mom doesn't come, I'll take you home. I'll take you home with me, and, it just, so little things like that. Like, that may sound silly to somebody. Oh my God, it was just a thunderstorm. Yeah, but I was 5 and somebody left me in a storm,
Right.
So there's always that fear of being left or abandoned because, my uncle was, what was he, 11? So he was a kid himself. But, when you go through something like that, you don't think it could affect you, but it does. And I would be terrified of storms. And I couldn't figure out why. When I got older, I was like, I have no idea. Heart would be pounding and like, oh my God, oh my God, like I was terrified. And my husband could not leave the room. Like, honey, don't leave me. He was like, what is wrong? It's just a thunderstorm. I'm like, I'm scared. I didn't know why I was scared. And so when I started journaling, and I started, I said to my mom, I'm really terrified of storms. And I never said anything before, but why? She was like, I don't know. Oh, she's like, well, you were left in a storm when you were 5. I'm like, what? She was like, yeah, and it was terrible. The storm was like up to your waist, and like the water was almost, and so I think that we have to be in touch with what frightens us. Maybe if I understood that going in, I could have processed storms a little bit better. Like, okay, I was left in a storm when I was a child. It was traumatic. I got through it. So now, when a storm happens, I am still terrified, but I'm able to work through it, and not, oh my God, it's thundering and lightning. And so there could be something, under an undercurrent going on. And I'm being very transparent and very vulnerable because I want people to understand that something small like that can impact you later. It was a storm, but it was a little kid being left in a storm, and it was very scary. So that's why it is important to be in touch with a storm. Say you and I got married and I wasn't in touch with the fact that I was in a storm. And every time there was a storm, depending on where we're living, I'm freaking out and you can't leave. I'm like, please don't leave me. And you're like, what is wrong with you? It is just thunder. It's just lightning. Just hold me. And so if I'm in touch with a storm, then this before we get married. You know that, hey, babe, I was left in a storm when I was a kid, and I know it seems weird, but I am terrified of storms. I'm working through this, but there are going to be moments, depending on how bad the storm is, I'm not going to want you to leave me. So you have the option to say, I can deal with this or I can't deal with that. But you're aware of now a childhood trauma that, however small it may have seemed, has impacted me to the point where I'm still, as a grown person, terrified of storms. So that's why knowing yourself is important. Maybe I blocked it out because I was like 5, but I didn't know why I was having these episodes. Like, as soon as it was lightning and thunder, I was freaked. I was like freaked completely out. So what do you say to that?
I say that you put it very, very succinctly. The quote that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. I think that what the journals do is give you an avenue to self-discovery so that you can be a better person for who God intends you to be with at some point. And if it's by yourself, then you're being better for you.
Exactly.
Someone else, then you're being better for them. So I agree completely. I have so many journals around here. My problem is not journaling; it's not finishing them, and then starting a new one. I think I'm addicted to the of starting a journal. So I do that, and as a writer and a creator, it allows me the space to kind of live within my own curiosity of imagination and understand me better, so that I can ultimately serve God better. Because ultimately, if you and I, let's say, using the example that you use, right, there's only one thing that you need to say to me that would probably have me hand over foot, and that would be to ask me one simple question: how can I serve you?
Whatever you like. Eddie Murphy.
That's obeying me. Right? There's a difference, serving and obeying.
Right. No, I agree. It is.
Servitude is what I do, not for you, but for God. You are
Right.
the recipient of that behavior. But you say to me, I'm going to outserve you, Ken. Then I'm like, you know what? That's what I'm talking about. Because you're not going to outserve me. I'm going to outserve you. I'd love to have that kind of intense fellowship with someone, right, who going to outserve each other.
Exactly.
Right? That would be absolutely awesome. But this path of self-discovery is so important. Through my wilderness phase, I will call it, all of these years that I've been single, I think that's one of the things that God has impressed upon me the most is self-discovery, understanding those things that not only that I like, but those things that I don't like, right? Those things that I need to see before I let someone in, and
Right.
ways that I can stand within my boundaries, and not give in to all those temptations of loneliness or isolation or excommunication, not because someone intentionally wants to get rid of you, but because naturally, I'm one of the only single folk in the group of married people, right? So
Oh, yeah, I
they just
have had a
naturally,
bite out of this apple for a while.
yeah, yeah, and so that's natural, right? It's not
Yeah,
intentional, but I just that's what I would desire to hear is just someone tell me, you know what, Ken, I'm gonna outserve you, right? Those are the things that I know that God is saying, okay, here are the things that you want, here are the things that you desire. These are the ways that she's going to bring those to you.
right, right.
Pretty,
Because
pretty simple.
there are people who, like, for instance, my mom, and mom, if you're listening, forgive me, but I'm going to dive deep into, you and dad a little bit. So, my mom was a sanguine in temperament, very outgoing, very bubbly, just like the life of the party. She had a women's ministry. My parents are preachers, just so everybody knows. My parents are preachers, grandparents, it's kind of the family biz. So, mom was more outgoing. She was a expository preacher. She had a photographic memory. When she preached, I mean, it was like from the heart. Dad was more of a manuscript preacher, and more of a teacher too. Excellent teacher. The way he could break down the word and just, take a subject matter and just dissect it. And he was just brilliant. So those two I thought were an excellent combination on the outside. But mommy was very, because they're both retired now. So she was very outgoing, very expressive, very passionate, and also very beautiful. So that did cause some issues. And she was a cross between Lola Falana and Donna Summer. She's like 5'10", all legs. So she used
We're
to
gonna,
model when she was young.
you're going to have to expound on that at some other point about her
Right.
beautiful
So
issues.
she was gorgeous. So dad was an introvert. Introverts tend to they're attracted to extroverts. They love to look at them and be around them, but to be married to them is very difficult,
Mhm.
because introverts tend to internalize everything. I think my dad was more melancholy and probably a lot of choleric. So one thing we find in leaders, directors, and writers, and especially producers, that they have some choleric in their tendencies. That means that they're able to motivate, they're able to find use for people. People are tools versus people. You know what I mean? Like everything has its place. They have the ability to make you think they're on, yay, I love people, but they really don't. So my dad was kind of like that. People loved him, but we could take people or leave him really, but he was a very good leader. My mother, very extrovert, also a really good leader, and they were both in ministry, so that caused them to go head to head a lot. And the one thing that my mother believed in, because she was, she dealt with women's ministry, and my father said to her, I don't mind you preaching, but I want you to preach only to women. What are we in a stone age? But yeah, that was the deal. You want to be a preacher, you feel like God's called you, you preach only to women. So mom, rising to the occasion, started Woman to Woman Ministries International, and it was huge. And so, I mean, dad didn't think it would be that way, but it turned out to be huge, which means that when God has a purpose for your life, no matter what it is, no one's going to snuff it out. I mean, she did concerts, she met Vicki Winans. I mean, like everyone in the city knew Woman to Woman Ministries International. People were coming up to me, hey, is your wife so and so? Then she went on the radio and she did TV. Wonder where I get it. But so having a mom like that. And then, so the one thing I thought was amazing was like when she would come home, she was totally his servant. She'd make his dinner, she'd cook, she'd bake, she'd sew, she'd do all of these things. And she spoiled my father rotten. Like, for instance, Saturday morning breakfast. Yes, mom, I'm going to tell them. Saturday morning breakfast, she would make pancakes. She would make sausage, bacon, grits, scrapple, scrambled eggs. I kid you not. And if he also desired, she'd make toast just so he'd have a variety.
So
We got
you
oatmeal. Okay, oatmeal.
okay, but
We're wheat Tina.
you just went past a whole group of people who don't know what scrapple
Well,
is.
no, yeah, right. Well, my family's from the South, and so Scrapple is this like amazing thing you got to try. Look for it in the supermarket, people. You fry Scrapple. It is the best tasting thing on the planet. And grits, if it's not cooking in 20 minutes, it's not authentic. You want old fashioned grits. 5 minute grits is not really grits. I mean, it's grits, but it's like grit. It's like the Diet Coke of grits. So you got to have authentic grits. It's gonna take about 20 minutes, and you want to have scrambled eggs fresh. My mom would often put like stuff in it, like she chopped cheese up and all that. She just spoiled that man. She really spoiled him. She said to me and my sisters, if a man can't feel like a king anywhere else, he needs to feel like a king at home. So our tradition in our family was Thanksgiving, mom made us serve. The men ate. They sat down at the table. We served them. We had our little aprons on and all that. And we served them throughout the whole dinner. Then we sat down and ate. But they had to be treated like a king. And for years, we had a one-legged turkey. So while, the turkey was cooking and everything, and she basted, and when it was done, dad got the first piece and he got a one-legged turkey. So we had a one-legged turkey. So he got to sit and eat while she was preparing the rest of the food, that turkey, like he was Henry VIII. So you would think that that would have made him appreciative, but it didn't. It didn't. It didn't match her needs. She served and gave like that because she had a need to be given back to. But dad was never able to really do that. I can remember seeing my parents kiss a couple of times. I can remember hearing my dad tell my mom, I love her, I love you, honey. Not often. She'd say it every day. Oh, baby, I love you. Honey, I love you. She put notes in his lunch. I mean, like that woman was like, if love had if love had a spice, it would be sugar. And she definitely was full of sugar. She would send him notes. She'd bake him special things. And she would, like my dad liked carrot cake. So my mom searched and searched till she found the family archive and found this carrot cake recipe. And she baked, only he could get this cake. So there was things only she would make just for him. Like growing up, I mean, I didn't like oatmeal once I got to college because we ate it all the time because mom made big breakfasts for dad. You know, like ridiculous. Like it was like Fred Flintstone. Like who could eat that much? But that was her husband, and her way of expressing love to him was through affection. My dad's cologne game was tight. He said he didn't know colognes cost that much until he had to buy his own. So colognes were expensive, and they discussed everything but the credit card. She stuck and got a credit card because she wanted to be able to buy him stuff and paid it off. So I think that for me, watching that, I was like, God, I don't want to be like that when I'm a wife. Jesus, I am not giving somebody all of that. But I found myself mimicking that behavior as well as my sisters. She taught us how to be a wife, but dad taught us how to pick a guy who was not appreciative. So that's how that's what I did. I picked a guy similar who didn't appreciate being, or didn't know how to show appreciation for being doted on and cherished and that kind of thing. And I found myself, because you look for your parents in your choices. Many people don't believe that, but there's something about your mate is going to have the characteristics of your father. Something about your mate is going to have characteristics of your mom. Maybe not a lot of them, but there are going to be some. And so we see our parents even in our mates. So that's why how we train a child is important. So yes, my mom was like a Stepford wife. When you'd come home, you could smell pine before you hit the steps, because she was always scrubbing and cleaning. And this is after working a full-time job. Or she would, her biggest thing was like she would cook, and she'd ask dad what he wanted for dinner. I don't know, surprise me. So she pull out menus, and she made all these different dishes. And I'm like, Mama, what are we gonna have? Like, we, Sunday dinner, we'd have spare ribs and all that, because Sunday dinners were always huge. So he would get a special beef short ribs, because that's what he liked. Plus, he'd get pork ribs if he wanted them. And then she'd make cabbage, and she'd make baked macaroni and cheese, or she'd make a rice pilaf, or she'd make, like, she really cornbread or popovers. Mommy has this recipe for these popover muffins that are to die for. So she learned from her mother, watching her mother serve her father, how to serve her husband. And so that's what she did. So we grew up seeing mom really behave like a servant, to our dad. And daddy was like the king of Siam. I mean, he was like, yeah, yeah, my wife's in there cooking, but those are the things that he took for granted. He didn't learn an appreciation for that until he lost that. So I think that it is important, and you hear Pastor Gia talk a lot about compatibility, and I'm not talking about compatibility in a sense of, oh, he's got to do this, you got to do that, because opposites do attract. But you have to have someone with the maturity to put the work in to want to please you as much as you're pleasing them, even if his personality doesn't necessarily allot for that. Because there are people that, you attract, I attract, the strong, silent type of guy, because that was my dad, hardworking, loyal, but, not expressive. If you got an I love you out of my dad, it was a lot. Dad, are you feeling okay? You said I love you. Is mom okay? Am I okay? Because dad didn't express love that way. He grew up in a home where boys were taught not to express their emotions or feelings. So he didn't. He learned to compartmentalize. So I believe he loved my mother, but he didn't know how to show it. And when she would show him love, it would freak him out. Like, what is she doing? Why is she doing this? Okay, let me just go along with this,
So,
So
in what specific ways do you feel learning that, which you've learned from both your mother and father, affected your relationships and or ability to maintain relationships?
well, I learned that, a lot of your behavior when you're young is it's just it's taught. It's embedded in you from the way you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Evolving into the woman you're meant to be, or the man you're meant to become, it takes self-discovery. It takes you really starting to take a look at your choices, your plans, why you're planning the thing that you're planning, what is the end game. And that's why writing things down is important. It's important because you're able to go back and say, that's why I did that. Yeah, I can see that now. And you're not able to see that when you are not in tune with who you are. So, if you know that you require affection because you give a lot of affection, you are affectionate, don't go getting a guy that doesn't want to, doesn't want affection, because he's not going to appreciate it. But you find yourself attracted to that kind of person because that's who your dad was. You know what I mean? That's who you tend to attract those. So you may have to come out of your comfort zone and say, God, I need you to send me someone who's not what I'm attracted to, not what I'm used to. I don't want that, because that doesn't work. He's not going to be able to give me what I need. So unless he makes a conscious effort to do that, and that would require a person being selfless, and so that means that you really have to say and be honest about who you are. Like, some women will conform and suppress their emotions and feelings Sorry, I thought somebody was outside my window. Some women will suppress their emotions and feelings. Um, and men, well, they're good at suppressing anyway, but because they want to conform to what they think this person wants. And that's not healthy. It's not good. And you find yourself not being you're not being authentic. It's not fair to that person and it's not fair to yourself. You want someone to love you for who you are. An informed decision is an honest decision. It's a decision that says, I know who I am. This is who I am. You present that to that person. And then they make an informed decision as to whether they want to be with that sort of person or not. So it is never okay. And I say this a lot in women's ministry. It's never okay to deceive. The Bible calls it deceiving and being deceived.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're deceiving this person, but you're also deceiving yourself into thinking that this is okay. It's not. I want someone to love me when I am at a scary movie. I want someone to love me when I'm watching a love story and I cry, and to put up with me watching the Hallmark Channel, especially around the holidays. You got to be honest about who you are. They have a right to know who you are. You have a right to know who you are, so that when you meet that person, it is not a prison sentence. Like, oh God, how long can this guy live? Jesus, I got to see that till death do us part. We're going to be together a while. But if you're honest, and he has to show you who he is, and you can't go, oh, well, normally I would see this as a red flag, but being though I'm lonely and kind of horny and I want to get married, I'm willing to overlook all that. You can't do that, because somewhere out there is a woman that'll take him just the way he is. He doesn't have to change. He doesn't have to put on airs. He doesn't have to pretend. And she doesn't have to pretend to love him with his differences or his shortcomings. What you find as shortcomings, she finds a treasure. You know what I mean? One man's treasure, how do they say it?
One
One
man's
man's,
is another man's trash.
right, right, exactly. So what this man may despise in you, and you feel you have to change, another man may say, I think you're beautiful just the way you are. So that man is worth waiting for, because he's out there. God has made your counterpart. And if you're patient and if you're honest, you will find him.
Right.
I have been single for 10 years. And so it took me 10 years to discover what I truly want, who I truly am. So now that I know who I truly am, I know I can recognize my counterpart when I encounter him. And I don't have to change. I don't have to chase him. I don't have to prove, what is it, Whitney's song? I'm every woman. Yeah, I don't have to be every woman. I just have to be his woman. You know what I mean? And that's what matters. He doesn't have to be every man. He just has to be your man. So you have to be in touch with yourself and your emotions and who you are, so that, you pick correctly. So that's what I mean by, telling God what you want. Not in the sense of he's a short order cook, but in a sense of, okay, God, I'm in touch with who I am. And I know what my counterpart should look like based on who I am as a woman. I know I'm not going to deceive him. I know I'm not going to play games with him. I know I'm not going to chase him. Too many women are chasing men nowadays. Let him, he's the hunter, let him hunt. And if he can't hunt, if something's wrong with his spear, then okay, we just find another hunter. So,
so we're going to role play here a little bit.
Okay. Yes. I'll be the man in the relationship. Oh, no, not the man. Okay. Okay. Well, thank God, because I think that would have been hard.
Sorry to disappoint you, but no, I'll be the
Okay, you can be the man. Well, you are the man, but okay.
I'm coming home from work.
Okay.
Honey, I just lost my job.
Okay. Oh, you poor baby. Oh my God, honey, are you okay? How are you feeling? We're going to get through this. We'll just have to pull our belts tight, babe, but God's going to bring us through it. Those monsters, were they mean to you? Did they escort you out? That's my mom. Many times my dad got in trouble at work or something's happened, she was always on his side. I can say definitely she was a ride or die. She was like, always, even in school, her philosophy was with her children. If we got called in the principal's office, it was a united front with my parents. They were not taking their side. I don't care what happened. They'll deal with us at home, but together we are a united family. Well, my dad would go, exactly what did my daughter do? Well, your daughter, Gia, staged a sit-in. My dad, you did what now? She staged a sit-in. She had the students make signs. She staged a sit-in. She told the students that they were fighting racial injustice. But we were. So my mom was like, "I'm sorry. So why exactly was she sitting in? Do you know what they were fighting?" He said, "Well, we had a situation where, because I went to a predominantly white school, where one of the little black students, she was a kindergartner, got off the bus, and a white student, big boy, like sixth grade, called her a nigger. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the air, but well, I guess it's okay because I'm black. But that's what happened, and so I was furious, and I, approached the boy and I said, "Why would you say that to a child? Why would you say that to her? She's 5 years old." Now, mind you, I was only 11, but I was kind of mature for my age. I read a lot of books. I read Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I read all these things. And my parents very much believed in racial equality and fighting injustice, from the 60s. So he was like, "I can do whatever I want, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, call me a nigger, go ahead, say it." He said, "Well, I mean, why are you saying that?" I said, "You called this little girl a nigger. She is a black person. I am a black person, and you need to respect that." I said, "And before this day is over, you're going to respect it." So I gathered all the minorities, even the little Asian kid. So we made signs during free time, during recess, and we went to the principal's office. I first tried to talk to him and tell him what happened. And he said, "Gia, you have to learn to turn the other cheek." Really? I said, "This isn't about forgiveness. This is about right and wrong. It is not right for a student to call another student a nigger. I don't care, that we live in, that our school is predominantly white. I'm saying to you that this is wrong and you should do something about it because you're the principal." "Oh, so now you're going to tell me my job." Gaslighter. "Well, listen, young lady, you need to get back to class and you need to learn forgiveness. Do you understand? I mean, okay, he made a mistake. Was it a mistake? Because nigger just seemed to roll off his tongue. Stop using that language. So it's okay. So I can't say nigger, but he can say nigger to a 5-year-old little girl. Okay. You know what? You are disrespectful, Missy." Yeah, that's what he was saying to me. So I really felt angry and I wanted to protest in a peaceful way. So I gathered all the minority students and I said, at recess, we are going to protest. We are going to make signs and we are going to sit in a circle outside the principal's office and we will not be moved. So we sat in a circle and we sang, "We shall not be moved." We did. And we sang, "We shall overcome." And so, I really felt like I was fighting injustice, because to say that I need to just turn the other cheek is saying that that behavior is acceptable. And in my eyes, it wasn't. And I felt like I wasn't just standing up for myself or that little girl, but I was standing up for every minority student. If you're a minority, you're my people, so let's get with it. So I did that. I staged a sit-in And he threatened to suspend us. He threatened to call our parents. And he called me in his office. He said, I will suspend every student here. I said, I'm not moving. So you would let all these students be suspended. I said, that's your call, but I'm not moving. If it's okay for him to say nigger, then it's okay for me to protest. You are very disrespectful, young lady. I don't know where you come from, but you are really getting on my nerves. Yeah, he threatened to hit me with a ruler and everything. I said, well, then you'll have to hit me because I'm not going to move. You can be suspended, then suspend me, but I'm not going to move. So I said to the other students, hey, he's threatening to suspend you guys. I don't want to see it happen. I'm going to be here. Anybody that wants to leave, leave, but I'm not going anywhere. So I stayed. So he called my parents. My dad left work early, which he was grumpy. My mom, he didn't really tell them. He just said I was defiant and I was horrible. And, and they really needed to come and deal with me. So, my dad asked me what happened. And he said, well, I told you what happened. He said, excuse me, I'm talking to my daughter. And don't you ever interrupt me when I'm speaking to my child. I'm the authority here. So he got quiet. Well, Mr. McCuff, yeah. So I said, Dad, I got off the trolley and I walked up to the school and this little girl was crying and this white boy was calling her a nigger. My dad's face, I'll never forget his face. My mom's face. He goes, what did you say? I said, yeah. He called her a nigger and he, little girl was crying. He was making fun of her and stuff like that. So I pushed her back and I got in front of her. I said, call me a nigger. So my dad was like, well, what happened? Did he hit you? Then what happened? I said, no, he didn't hit me. But I said to him, this is not okay. And there's going to be consequences for this. And so I went to the principal. I told him what happened. He said I needed to learn to turn the other cheek. My dad was like, what? So at that point, my dad wanted to fight. So my mom grabbed my dad because she knew where this was going. Because, Mr. Miller, the principal, was mouthing off at this point. And when you say nigger to a black person, especially back then, is a serious thing. So he said, you want to suspend my daughter for standing up for injustice? You think it's okay for a student to say that? Mr. McCuff, please. You're using a term that we don't want used in this school. He said, but yet it's been used. I want to know what you're going to do about it. Well, the student's going to be talked to and this and that. He said, so is this student going to be made to apologize? He said, I spend good money for my daughter to go to this school. He said, and black money spends just as well as white money. You know why? Because it's green. And I can take my green and take her somewhere else. Well, I don't, let's just let cooler heads prevail, he said. Then he wanted to pray. And the bottom line is my father said to me and my mother, I need you two to step out of this room. My mother looked at me. She was like, okay, come on, honey. She was like, Dave, honey. All right, baby, you got this. And so there was a lot of shouting in that room, I remember. But when he came out, he apologized. And he made that student during an assembly apologize to that little girl. So I say all that to say that, yes, civil disobedience sometimes is necessary to bring change. And those things that was instilled in me because of the kind of parents I had. It is very important. Not to go off topic a little bit, but if you're a parent out there, you keep a united front with your kids. Well, he said my son was bad and this and that. He said, what does your son say? You know who you gave birth to. Mm-hmm. And if you know yourself, it's easier to recognize yourself in that child. My parents saw me and, they saw like a Dr. King, Malcolm X combo. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. And yes, it was disobedient. And yes, it was considered defiant, but it was right. At the risk of getting suspended, I wanted to stand up for someone else and stand up for myself. So I think that what we put in our kids is character. But the kind of character determines the kind is it comes from the kind of parent you are to them. If you don't instill values, they're not going to have any. Shocker. But if you create a united front, I never, even with my children, if my daughter got in trouble, and oftentimes she was in trouble, I never took the principal's side. Well, your daughter didn't do this and your daughter didn't do that. Uh-huh. What are you doing? How are you teaching her? Why would you say that? Honey, what happened? You know what I mean? Well, am I speaking to my child or am I speaking to you? You know what I mean? So I am not one of those parents that would take the side of the teacher. And if my daughter was wrong, I would deal with it at home. But what you're not going to do is divide my family ever. That was daughters, stepdaughters, because I've had them. And, no, not our family. Nobody messes with our family. So I grew up that way. My grandparents were that way, and I'm that way, and my kids are that way. They will, my one daughter doesn't have children, but my oldest, yeah, they will fight for their children. They will stand up for what's right, and they will tell them to stand up for what's right. So I say all that to say that if you don't know yourself, then you don't know what to put in. You don't. Oh, hang on one second. I have to let our radio family go. Coming up next is Team Nathan. And if you are part of our GCPR family, we love you. We enjoy being here. And we thank you for joining us. So I hope you've enjoyed the broadcast. I know the radio family has to go. From my heart to your home, thank you and God bless you. And remember, if no one has told you they love you, I do. God bless you and thank you for hanging with Pastor Gia. Have a good night. So those of you that are watching the podcast, we can continue. We're good, but I have to let them go early. So it is very important in a relationship that when times get hard, you double down in that relationship and you pull together as a family. But you have to have a point of reference. You have to be a family. You can't be divided. The Bible says a house divided against itself will not stand. Even if you're a household of two. In the book of Ecclesiastes says one lays down and they're cold. Two lay down and they're warm. But a three-cord knot is not easily broken. You are stronger together. A household is stronger together. Not my money and his money, but ours. Not my stuff and his stuff, but our things. So you have to begin to see things as one, as us, as a we. You have to be the we of me. So, you have to be able to show a level of strength and humility that will afford you the opportunity to be a partner, to be a spouse. Okay, Ken, it's your turn.
I'm thoroughly enjoying listening to what it is that you're communicating. So, I mean, I don't have the egotistical desire to overtalk or run my mouth. If I'm hearing something that's good, I'm going to listen.
Well, I appreciate that, but I like hearing what you have to say. And it's not egotistical. It's just you are an amazing speaker. I like the way you talk and you articulate and you get your point across and you are very direct. So please jump in.
Well, I think that one of the things that we've heard very operatively and very consistently is the idea of servitude.
Yes.
You talked about your mom. You talked about your dad in his way serving his family. That it ultimately comes back to the idea of how do we get through these hard things, these hard challenges, these hard times as a couple. We do that by outserving one another. To take our focus off of the hard times, take our focus off of all that could be wrong, and we figure out, how am I going to serve you through this? How am I going to make this hard time easier for you? Because I know God got me. So how am I going to make this hard time easier for you? As a man, that's going to be my approach to it. That's going to be how I approach getting through hard times. How can I make this better for you? How can I outserve you? And if we're focused on that, all that other stuff, we don't have time to worry about. I don't have time to worry about, you breathe the wrong way, or I cooked dinner twice this week and you should be cooking this. Personally, I don't want you in my kitchen. So that's I draw the line. So, whoever's out there listening, they're going to have to understand that you got to stay out of my kitchen. All right.
Well, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Harry S. Truman, 53?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that what you're saying about outserving each other, I guess I never saw it that way because I've never seen that. My dad didn't outserve my mom. He just allowed her to serve. And we learned to be, my dad was a stickler for women being women being soft. My sisters had ballet lessons. I had charm lessons. My dad was, piano lessons. I played the cello. We all played strings. I played the cello. I have a sister that played the violin and excelled just beautifully. My other sister, Jan, played the viola. So they were very deliberate in what they wanted us to know. I spoke French and Japanese. I should have learned Spanish. It's such a hard language. I'm still learning it, people. So just be patient. So I think that, and they sacrificed and sent us to private schools, and because they wanted us at Catholic schools, they wanted us to have a better education. Oh, I started out in Christian school and I went to Catholic school, and my sisters, earlier, and then Dad just said, you know what, we're sending them to Catholic school, period. And so it afforded us a better education. It taught us discipline, but having parents that made sure that we were a united front always stayed with me. And that is what makes a good wife. That is what makes a good husband. That is what makes a solid family. But you have to have somebody that thinks like that. You have to have somebody like mine. You have to be on one accord, because if you're not, then you find yourself mismatched. You find yourself married to somebody that doesn't understand the values nor share those values. They may think they're archaic. They may think they're ridiculous. So you won't have a strong family.
Right. How can two walk together?
Yes, I agree.
And that's the key.
What would you say, as a husband, your biggest challenge could be? With with getting married again, starting a new family. Obviously, it would be a blended family situation now because we're older people, and you have to now allot for her children and this kind of thing, and that is going to be a challenge, as well as your children. And it doesn't matter if they get along because the kids are grown, but still there has to be a level of bringing them together.
Wow, so that's a loaded question. My biggest challenge, personally, is going to be trust. I see your brain going.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay, you have to elaborate.
I know how I see it. I know how I'm going to behave. I know how I'm going to approach it. I just have to get to a point, just based on experiences, and I'm just talking about me personally, right? Being thoroughly transparent. I have to get to a point where I'm going to allow myself to trust that there is going to be someone out there that's going to meet me at that place, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. That's going to be my biggest challenge.
Do you think that such a person exists? Because
Uh,
it's always about faith.
so I will take a cue from that great philosopher Dave Chappelle, and I will say, I plead the fifth. One, two, three, four, five, five, fifth. I'm not going to answer that question.
I I struggle with that because it's like I don't know if there is a man out there that can put up with me. About he deserves a medal if he can, but I would say I'm not the easiest person to deal with because I am emotional, and a lot of women have learned to control their emotions, and hats off to you, ladies. But I tend to be very passionate and very emotional about things, and um, I don't know how the modern man equates that anymore. I don't think they like emotional women. They don't like women who cry. They don't like women who shows emotion. And I can't help it. So, and I'm not going to be anything else. So, um, I guess I'm looking for someone a little more old fashioned and, that matches my values and, that can handle me because I'm a lot. And, when you're honest about who you are, then there's no need for pretense. I'm not going to say, I never show emotion. Oh, so you don't like emotion. Okay, so we're on a date. Oh, so no, I'm not emotional. Oh no, yeah, I can't remember last time I cried. It was before this date. Yeah, no, yeah, I don't like that either. Or, yeah, not, occasionally I like to have a glass of wine and, I drink a beer. Ew. So really, I don't mind that. I can't stand the taste of liquor. Ew, ew. No, no. I just don't. You want to drink? I'm not your girl. I don't want to hear that. Glass of wine once in a while with dinner, I don't have an issue with, but beer guzzling and all of that stuff, I'm not for it. I just don't. That's just not what I. That would not please me. So but some women might say, "Oh, it's okay if he drinks. He drinks socially. He does this. He does." Well, okay, if you can handle that, and you drink too, and that's what you want to do, that's fine. I don't drink, so I don't have liquor. So, if I love the person and it's like oh, well, he just wants a glass of wine with dinner once in a while. Okay, well, maybe I could tolerate that. But the guy sitting there drinking a six pack in front of the TV, no.
So if we went out on a date and he drank, would you go out on a second date?
It depends on what he was drinking. I mean, like if he's sitting there with I'm just going to have one for the road. Another one? You just had a glass of wine with dinner and you need something else? Are we taking an Uber home? You think you're going to drive? Well, you know what? Let me get the check. I'm going to pay for my dinner and I'm leaving. You know what? This was so miserable. I'm going to make you pay for that. Okay. Check, just, check, please. I'm leaving. I typically would not. I have on a date thought it was so miserable. I called an Uber. I didn't say anything to the guy. It was like, when it was, it might sound a bit immature, but like his conversation was just so, off to me that I called an Uber. I was sitting there texting, calling me an Uber, and he was like, because he said, I know you're a church lady and all that, but I feel like if the mood is right, two people should have sex. Wow. So you think that this $50 of a dinner equates all that? First of all, you don't know my blood type. You don't know my middle name. You don't know if I'm crazy. I definitely think you're crazy. Um, I don't do that. Okay. I don't believe in sex before marriage. Let's just start with that. So right there, we're probably not going to have a second date. And because you brought sex up on a first date means that you probably have, like a man horse spirit. So I'm not going to deal with that either. He was sitting there like, what? I'm like, yeah, I just, this is not going well. And he was like, well, just give me a chance, maybe, let's go to the movie. We'll take a walk on the beach. Yeah, nah. I said, I've already called the Uber, thank you. No need to call me again, but it was a pleasure meeting you. But my Uber's here, so I'm gonna go. Well, at least let me take you home. I bought you here. At least let me take. No, no need, no need. I don't want to go anywhere with a guy that I'm meeting on the first date and he's talking about sex, because that means that is all you're thinking about. That is all you're here for. I'm going to now get in a car alone with you again. Yeah, no, no, mm-mm. Nope, not going to happen. So he tried. He called a couple of times. I blocked him. Before I blocked him, I explained to him, we are unequally yoked. I gave him the whole how can two walk together unless they agree, and patience is a virtue. FYI, depending on the woman, if she says she's a pastor, not a good idea to be pushing a sex thing on a first date or a second date. Probably shouldn't be bringing that up. Just FYI. Take it or leave it. So I find that honesty and being forthright is the way you stay out of trouble. But he's so cute. Well, if a guy says to you from the door, this sex before marriage thing is, I want to have sex. And you're like, well, we could talk about it. Right now, you're telling this man you don't stand for anything. And if he feels like if you bend for him, you bend for anybody. So the signal and the message that you think you're sending, you're not sending, ladies. So you either stand for something or you fall for everything. And standing on your principles is worth standing for, because there's a guy out there that has principles too. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you say to the gentleman that talks about sex on the first date, man? It's a little, and we're older too. Like what?
What I say to that guy is that wasn't a smart choice, whether you're a pastor or not. The woman that I want to respect me, I have to see respects herself. And if she engages, entertains that conversation on the first date, then I'm going to be honest with myself and say, well, I'm not a prude. I'm a guy. So, don't take this the wrong way. But I'm not seeing the respect for herself that I want to have her show for me. And if you don't respect yourself, then I'm probably going to be disappointed in how you respect me. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
So that's not on the first night.
Yes, it's like, but I'm told by the Gen Zs and those generations, I do counsel younger women, and they say that they hook up on first dates. I was like, hook up where? You don't even know this person. Ew. He can have anything. Oh, well, we use condoms and what? I know way too much about this generation. But I also found from the older generation that they hook up sometimes. So it's all about, to me, as you say, respecting yourself and respecting, values. If you want a wife, you want to know that a wife is not out there just, throwing it around. Now, everybody has different belief systems. When you're in a relationship, some people believe that sex before marriage is okay. Well, we're in a relationship. You're not married. But marriage is just a piece of paper. It is an important piece of paper. So I think that sex before marriage is a topic that in the church, we just kind of swept over. Well, people are going to live together. Yeah, but should they though? Like I said last week, and you may not have heard this, but we were talking about couples that live together. And I said, listen, here is the problem with living together and you're not married. Suppose you decide in the middle of this relationship that you don't want to be with this guy. So now, if you lived in separate houses, it's just packing up a couple of his things, putting it in a box, him dropping your box off on your porch, and you leaving your box outside, and him coming to get his box. When you live together, you're dividing assets. You're dividing bank accounts. you're dividing a lease. You know what I mean? It's a really serious thing. And if you bought a house together, oh, forget it. Forget about it. You know, you put yourself in a situation where you're playing wife to someone who is not your husband,
Mm.
and you're playing husband to someone who's not your wife. So I think that if my grandma used to say, well, she's good enough to sleep with, she's good enough to marry. Well, yes and no. I mean, like if you've made the decision to cross over and she's that important to you, do you want to move in with her? Why not marry her? That is a good question. And old people would ask that question all the time. And I thought, well, good Lord, they got to do all this. Yes. You know, if you want to start, well, I'm going to eventually start a life with her. I think a man knows. I was corrected by a gentleman a couple of weeks ago. I said, well, a man chooses based on his information. He said, don't get this twisted. A man knows. When he meets a woman, he absolutely knows who she is to him, what he wants her to be versus what he doesn't. He said, if he's honest, a man will tell you he does know. So a man knows from sitting 5 minutes with you or 20 minutes with you or the first or second date, whether or not he wants to spend a lifetime with you. He's already placed you in a category according to what other men are saying. Now, I don't know if this is true. Can you let me know? But they're saying that men just know. They know what kind of woman they think you are or where they think that you would fit in their life. And if they don't want to marry you, they kind of know. They're not confused. So if he's not marrying you because he doesn't want to. Well, we've been together only 3.5 years. That's a long time. Because the right man will come along and be like, boo, I know we've been dating 6 months, but I'm ready. I know what I want. You know what you want. Let's do this. So I don't think it takes an exuberant amount of time either. What do you think?
Um, I don't think it takes an exuberant amount of time, but I do give grace to this notion that a man knows.
Okay.
The operative part of that is when you said if he's being honest, right? But if he's being honest to who? If he's being honest to himself, then he knows. If he's not being honest to himself, so this has nothing to do with the woman.
I see. Okay.
He's being honest with himself, then he'll know right away whether he wants to or he doesn't want to. Um, a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this, is not being honest to myself, but basing my responses on past hurt. And then having to humbly go back with my tail between my legs and say, I was wrong. I really do want this. I was just reacting. So in those cases, in that case, I wasn't being honest with myself. If I was, then yeah, I would have known right away.
Interesting. So what do you say to the guy that says to the girl, well, I don't know. I'm just confused. I just want to see where this goes for a little while longer. I'm just not sure how I feel.
9 times out of 10, he knows. But if he's not being honest with himself, because I've said that, I've said almost those very same words just because I was protecting myself and did not want to be hurt. And so I put that guard up and said those things just as much for her hearing it as for me convincing myself. And then realized I wasn't being honest with myself. And then said, you know what? I probably made a mistake. So I think that the key part is being honest with yourself. To that own self, be true.
Shakespeare.
If you are an emotional man, be an emotional man. If you are a communicative man, be a communicative man. Be who you are, regardless of the experiences that have tried to chip away at that.
Right.
King
David was an emotional man, and King Solomon was a communicator. He was a man full of communication and passion, and David was, he was emotional.
Yeah. That was my challenge growing up. because I too had a dad who was, don't let them see you cry,
Right.
right? Don't let them people mess with your head, right? Real men don't cry. So I grew up that way. But then I lived in a time period of inner conflict because that wasn't me. And I wasn't allowing myself to be who I am. I'm an emotional guy. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I communicate through my words. I communicate through my actions.
And
And
your movies. Very good, by the way.
thank you.
A Hard to Forgive. I don't know which one I liked more. A Hard to Forgive one or I think two I liked better. I don't know, but one, I was crying more on one.
We're crying more than one. Oh,
I really was. So I'm excited because you do have another movie you're working on. So I can't wait to see what that's going to be too. But yeah, you're a very good communicator.
so
Um,
and
that is true.
it's taken me a while to get comfortable in that skin and develop it to be soft enough to allow you to caress it, but yet hard enough to not allow you to penetrate it.
I like that.
Okay.
Soft enough to allow you to caress it, but hard enough not to allow you to penetrate it. Got that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have to be true to myself. And if you don't agree with me being true to myself, or if you have a difficult time in me being true to myself, then I have to deal with that. I have to manage that, and I have to be who I am no matter what. Your opinion of me, doesn't mean the end of the world to me if it's not positive. That's what I mean when I say about having it be hard enough to not be penetrated, but yet soft enough so that I can allow you to caress it and know who I am and communicate to you and have you feel safe with me.
Interesting. Okay. I like that. I do. I like that. So when we hear the phrase loving when it's hard, not just when it's easy, what do you think about that phrase when you hear that? Um,
Um, Loving when it's hard, not when it's easy.
Not just when it's easy. Love
Not,
me when it's hard, not just when it's easy. I love the song because it's truth. Anybody can love when it's easy.
yeah, yeah. So I will sound um, a little self-absorbed when I say this, and I understand that's how it sounds, but it's coming. It's meant to be a testimony, not an act of braggadocio.
Hmm.
Um, what do I think about when I think about loving, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard? I think about my marriage. I think about the changes that my marriage went through physically, emotionally. When there were times when there was no physicality at all in my marriage because of some of the health issues that my wife went through.
Wow.
I was determined that I wasn't going to let my marriage and my family fail because of this one part of this entire relationship that I have. Because that one part is not going to outweigh all of the other things that were good and positive and all the other things that were blessings. Just not going to do it. So I was more than willing to accept loving through those hard times because what was important to me outweighed those hard times.
I think that's beautiful. I do. I think that's beautiful when you can love, um, even at a time when they're sick or when they have health issues. The Bible talks about in sickness and in health. It is very important that you choose a partner that can love you when it's hard, love you when you're sick, that can honor those vows. If he can't love you when you're healthy, you really should not be marrying him because that means that at some point We're all going to get older and health issues are going to fail. Now, here's the one thing you can be sure of with a narcissistic personality. Uh, he knows you love him. He does. He knows you love him. He knows he can count on you. He knows you hard down with your boots lace, and he understands that you are, his person. What he chooses to do is not be that for you. But he's very aware of who you are. I just want him to see me. Oh, Pastor G, he just doesn't see me. No, he knows. Believe me, he sees you. That's why he's still here. What he's not going to do is give of himself. Not that no woman warrants that. It's just that he's so self-absorbed, he doesn't see anyone else but himself. That is a person that is emotionally underdeveloped. That is a person that is not capable of giving love. And unless God comes in and does a work, he never will be.
Sounds like you're talking about what you know.
Talking about what I've studied and what I've seen. And I've seen a lot. They come in, they sit in your office, Pastor. I called you Pastor. Maybe it's prophecy. They come in and they sit in your office. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what you're going to get. I analyzed the case. I thought I was sure of it. This couple would come in and they were fighting and all this. I had no idea that little 4'9" woman was beating him. Literally beating this poor man. I was like, what? I did a home visit. I don't usually do a home visit, but the husband asked me to come and do a home visit. There was holes in the walls. There was, she ripped the handle off the oven. She was angry. I was like, what the heck is happening here? She was tearing him up, this big, muscular, muscle-bound guy. And so I recognized right away that, my assessment of the situation was wrong. And this woman not only had anger issues, but it was a spiritual condition. And so, I said, when I did the home visit, she tried to control it. Pastor, I'm so used to talking to pastors. Ken, I'm telling you, she was like a gasket ready to blow. And then he said one thing and, oh my God. And I'm like, all right, that's enough. I've seen enough. I want to see tomorrow morning in my office. We need to have some conversation, intimate conversation. And we definitely you need a deliverance because those are demons. She lifted that guy off the ground. Wow. She had the strength of 10 men. I was like, yeah, that's spiritual. So I think that you see a lot of things in this business. And your ability to assess things and to understand or to discern helps you. God gives you the tools to help someone else. And so that's why we serve. That's why we do what we do. Your movies were written out of pain and hurt, but they ministered to people everywhere. Anyone that I talk to that have seen your movies, and I talked to a few, church people, pastors, like, oh, what? I was like, he wrote that? I was like, he did. That movie changed my life. You will never know how many people you've touched, how many lives you changed because you stepped out and you obeyed God and you did something that people thought wasn't possible, that maybe a small part of you didn't think was possible. But we learned that with God, all things are possible and he has a reason for everything. And I am really, even as your friend, I'm very impressed and very proud of you for the work that you've done and the work that you continue to do. Continue to let the Lord use you because you are changing lives and you are changing families.
Someone asked me about that whole process of writing The Heart That Forgives movies, which there are going to be 2 more, just so you know.
I can't wait.
There's going to be a part.
I'm waiting for the dress.
The dress is now, was that prophetic you just spoke there? I'm waiting for the dress. No, that's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but was just led to put pen to paper um, when the idea came. So it's going to be interesting. I've had a lot of interesting feedback already just from the concept. Um, but people have asked me about the Heart That Forgives series, and I tell them yes, it was born out of some heartache and some pain, but it was created through the process of healing because there was not just healing that I was offering, but it was healing that I was seeking
That's right.
and healing that I received through telling this story, through dealing with the pain, dealing with the situations. The script was my journal,
Wow.
so it was a path and a journey of self discovery.
I like that.
And I, I'm anxiously looking towards the opportunity for part three and part four to come to fruition.
Well, I think that it was the second movie was very rich, very heavy, and very you can see the process evolving in you. And they were excellently done. It was excellently written, if I do say so myself. I really am amazed and in awe of what God has given you and how how you've been using it to transform lives. And
Well,
that's what you've been doing.
and I just give God all the glory for that. But I'd be, I wouldn't be honest if I held on to all the credit. Um, this was for me to write this story was the easy part. Uh, the hard parts came through my director, M. Legend Brown, and my producer Kelly Gray on the first one, and Michael Grayson on the second one. My co-producers taking this craziness in my head and down into something that would be meaningful and make sense. So I had the easy part. I always tell people that I had the easy part. Um, I just said yes to God. That was the easy part, and this team came together and really helped me make it happen.
That's amazing. And God knows who to send at just the right moments and just the right time. It's almost like it was like a divine appointment, even the way you selected your cast. And it was if you have not seen the movie A Heart That Forgives, it is a wonderful, wonderful film. Uh, Ken Jenkins is the writer and executive producer. Can you tell them where the film can be found? Like everywhere, but
If you were just simply to go on Google and search A Heart That Forgives, you'd come back with one or two things. You'd come back with my good friend Kevin LeVar Gray, who's a gentleman who wrote the song "A Heart That Forgives," which inspired.
wow. Oh no.
Um, you'd find his song, or you'd find my movie.
Wow.
Been so closely intertwined, but you could find it on YouTube. You can find it on Tubi. You can find it on Prime, Amazon Prime. The first movie is still being shown on PureFlix. So you can find them on pretty much any of your mainstream streaming platforms. Um, I'm happy to say that on YouTube, part two is close to 1 million views, um,
Oh.
and that's not included
wow.
on the other platforms. That's just YouTube.
Just YouTube. Oh my gosh. Look
Uh,
at that.
so on Tubi, you could probably multiply that by 6 or 7 times in terms
Wow.
of people that have seen it. Part one, which was done 7 8 years ago,
Yeah.
still um, garnering, quite quite a good amount of views, because then people see part two and then they want to go back and see part one, right?
Right. That's what happened to me.
Not that I said it.
I haven't seen that in a while. Let me go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
That's
yet,
good.
cast. I mean, I could tell you we could be on for another 2 or 3 hours just to tell you how divinely led the casting was, in not just the part one, but part two as well. And
Wow.
we're just going to continue to lean on God for uh, making three and four happen.
Wow. I mean, just like the money, everything just came together, and it wasn't an easy choice. I mean, it was the climb. It is the climb, you know, but you saw the vision, and you didn't know quite how you were going to get there, but you did the climb, and you made the sacrifices, and you made it happen just based on what God told you to do, and that is divine and true obedience. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
Amen.
And
Amen.
congratulations again. That's wonderful. It really is. It was inspiring. And I think that one thing I understand in a relationship is that it constantly evolves and changes. Nothing stays the same. It can't. We don't stay the same. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing our mindset, ideologies, everything changes. And so if you have a relationship that is stagnant, it won't be able to survive hard times. It'll, if it's stuck and it's just, you've got somebody fixed and they're not willing to change and grow,
Right.
then, it kills the relationship. Everything in life, everything in this planet needs nurture. And a relationship needs nurture. The nurture requires two people. One person cannot keep a relationship alive.
No.
One person cannot love you when it's hard. You both have to love each other to
And,
make it work.
and I would add to that by saying one person can't keep the relationship alive, but even two can't necessarily make it grow. That's why there needs
That's
to be
right.
three.
That's right. That's right. And by three, you mean God being in this relationship.
Yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. I was talking spiritually.
We
Okay.
wanted to clarify that to make
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I'm going to clarify that. Okay.
They're like, ooh.
This kind of podcast. No.
Is this kind of party, huh?
Spouse and God.
Oh, those Hollywood types, right?
But
No, but it does. You're right. It does take three. A three-chord knot is not easily broken. That's what the book of Ecclesiastes talks about. If God is in that relationship, then it can survive. It will survive. And then also, it does, loving someone when it's hard requires forgiveness. People make mistakes. We are not perfect. We make mistakes.
right.
And if you can't forgive a mistake, if you're holding on to, I was dating this guy a while ago, and he said something about something that happened like 4 months before, and I was like, "What? How long have you been squirreling that away? What? What are you doing?" So when you have someone that's bitter or encased in fear, it makes it very difficult to forgive things, little things. Like oh well, you didn't do this, and you said you were going to do that, and this, that, and the other. Yeah, I had to go to the emergency room. I twisted my ankle. I'm like, what are you talking about? Sorry, I couldn't keep my promise and take you to the movies. No, I just, you have to be able to keep no record of wrong or what you equate wrong. If someone doesn't meet your expectations for whatever reason, however unreasonable or reasonable you think, you have to be able to forgive that. And forgiveness is something that only God can do
Right.
in you. You know what I mean? If you have a problem, some people are just born, Oh, I'm never going to forgive. I'm never going to do this. No one's ever going to hurt me. So, in saying no one's ever going to hurt me, it means that you're not going to risk your heart. If you want to find love, you've got to be able to risk the one organ that is so vital, and that is the heart. It is from the heart that God speaks to man. It is from the heart that man takes his first breath when it beats. That's how you know you're alive. It is from the heart that you speak the abundance. Out of the abundance of the mouth, the heart speaks.
Therein lies my challenge. Therein lies my challenge, is to allow that heart to be vulnerable. But
Well,
I know,
it's a scary thing, I got to tell you. You got to bring your A game. You got to. You want to play ball, you got to bring your A game. You got to be, Allen Iverson. He's one of the best ball players we had in Philadelphia.
yeah,
I
I
think
figured you would bring it.
AI.
You were from Philly. I figured you'd bring up you know, personally.
Huh?
We're talking about Albert King. We're talking
Oh, yeah.
Jackson. Because I grew up in the boogie down, New York City.
Okay. Some
Necessarily like
good players.
that's all right.
Yeah, no, you guys had some good players, no question about it.
Bernard King, Albert King, Patrick Ewing.
There's a name I heard around the dinner table.
You know who I ran into the other day?
Who?
Robert Parrish.
Really?
Yeah, literally just I was in Home Depot picking up some cleaning,
Wow.
and here comes this 7'2" giant into the cleaning aisle, looking at cleaners with me, and I was like, "Mr. Parrish." I said, "Forgive me. I didn't. It's okay that I recognize you." He's like, "Young man, it's good to be recognized."
Oh,
It was cool.
yes. Life has been a journey and it goes fast. But
Uh,
if you're going to ride the wave, if you are going to make this thing work called a relationship, you're going to have to open your heart and you're going to have to keep it open. And in a relationship, you're going to have to give and take. You're going to have to love somebody through when they're not at their best. Some people do have emotional issues and they get depressed and they get down. And you're going to have to recognize that. The Bible says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy.
yeah,
Mercy's like a bank account. You store up enough of it, it's there when you need it. And so in a relationship, it requires mercy and forgiveness, and it requires truth and love, you know, and not throwing things in your partner's face. I remember when you did this, and Bonnie, you said you forgave me. You left me out there. And if you're, as long as you hold on to the slightest bit of bitterness, Satan can destroy your marriage. The Bible says the little foxes destroy the vine.
right. And that bitterness may not even be with your partner. That bitterness can be from a childhood trauma, from a family situation that you're now carrying into your relationship or your marriage.
That's true. That's true. And when you carry those things into the marriage, you make loving you harder. It makes the relationship
Yeah,
more vulnerable.
yeah. It's good stuff. You're not gonna send me a bill for this couch session, are you?
Oh, years of wisdom between the two of us.
At least one of us.
Oh, I think you've got a lot of wisdom. Anyone who has not seen that film, when they see it, they're going to be like, yeah, definitely.
So you saw part two. Did you notice anything specific about it at the end?
I noticed that it left an opening for part three. That's what I noticed. I was like, oh, there's going to be a part three. Oh, we're going to have a conversation. You're not going to leave it like this. We're going to have a part. I like how you subtly left it open a little bit, just the door slightly, but just one part. It's like, yeah, he knew what he was doing. And I think people would love to see a part three. I do. The movies are very inspirational. They show family dynamics, they show vulnerability, and they show redemption.
Amen. Yeah.
And that's no one is beyond redemption, no one is beyond help.
No one is beyond redemption. That is, if there's one message that I want the movies to convey, is that no one is beyond redemption. There is nothing too hard that God cannot forgive.
That's right.
Nothing. You just have to decide that you're going to give yourself permission to heal.
Right. I think it's true. And remember that your partner is flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make mistakes. They're human. And you can't ask God to forgive you if you're not willing to forgive.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, okay. Now, if he left the toilet seat up, just let it go. Let it go. Let it go. It's just not, it's a man thing. I was bitter once too. I mean, I remember going to the bathroom and I was pregnant. I fell in. Okay. I fell in, people. So, I felt he was out of here.
So I have to ask.
It was horrible.
All right. I mean, no. I mean, but I mean, how many people actually make it a habit of backing into a toilet seat without looking?
I don't know why. But it was dark and
No.
I had to pee.
You
I was
usually,
pregnant. She was sitting on my bladder, my uterus. I don't understand what she was sitting on, but I was rushing. I was like, oh gosh. And if you're out to here, I carried really big with both of them. They were 8-pounders. Well, let me see. So was 7. Rachel was 8'2". She was a big baby. Was 8'2". Sylvia was 7'6", or she was 7'6" or 7'4". She was littler, but that's still big. But I mean, but she used to like to lay right on the bladder when I was trying to sleep, and so being an inconsiderate husband and leaving the toilet seat up is mean. Not tolerated.
I agree. It's inconsiderate. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
women want to go to war for that. They will like burn your socks. They'll try to file for divorce. And then he had to come help me out of the toilet, which made it really.
So it was a humiliation.
I was angry.
More than anything else.
And he was like, "What happened? How'd you get in?" What? And I'm trying to breathe through it because I'm like, if I'm so angry, I'll go in labor. I'm just really angry right now. Help me out of the toilet. You can't get out yourself.
Okay, this
God, I'm
conversation.
going to kill this man. So you can store up some bitterness from it. I can say that it can breed unforgiveness and hostility. So, let's be considerate of one another, especially with the toilet seat. It's serious. Very, very serious.
Yeah. So raising 2 daughters.
So it's very serious.
Well, they did have their own restrooms.
Oh, well, see,
But it always made me, to understand the idea of being considerate with things like that.
With this tragic story.
Things like that.
Yeah, it was horrible. It's really horrible. Very traumatizing. In fact, if I do get married again, I want my own bathroom. I have to have it. with the
Get,
jacuzzi. He's never allowed in there.
get your own bathroom and don't go out in the storms.
Right. Definitely that. Definitely that. And thank you for being so gracious and not teasing me, calling me a big baby. It
I
was very traumatizing.
No, we are. You said it best. The hand that rocks the cradle. Right. We have to understand that the things we live out and that are burned into our templates as children are the behaviors we express as adults most of the time. And I think that you set some people free by simply speaking that quote, by letting people understand that, you know what, these are some behaviors I've probably held on to from some experiences I went through as a child. And
Right.
now they can now explore that through what? Through journaling.
Yes.
So,
Definitely journaling. I mean, if it goes deeper than that, where you sink into depression or you reliving things, then I recommend that you would seek professional help. You should get a counselor or therapist or pastor who specializes in therapy. They are not one and the same. Those two are not synonymous. Just because you're a pastor doesn't mean you're given to professional counseling. You need to be trained. So I think that there are some things that people go through that they do need individual counseling and they do have to work through things. Certain things trigger them, and your spouse could be completely innocent and you see him as an assailant, and he's like, what is happening right now? What did I do? Well, the truth of the matter is you didn't do anything. This person was carrying something into the marriage and they were triggered long before you came along.
right,
So you need to give yourself a break, especially if you're working through a marriage right now that has problems. There are multiple reasons and they're not all your fault. They may be none of your fault. Sometimes people come to a relationship trauma filled, and they're not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you about their childhood. They're not going to tell you about the brother that killed their hamster or their turtle. Maybe, there are things that, if we're honest and we're transparent in all our lives that we would rather not remember.
right,
But it is healthy to not bury things, especially African Americans. We're good for take it on the chin, suck it up, let's just move, let's just get it over with. And you can only bury things so far. There is a limit. That is
right,
not an infinite pot that you can just pour things down and eventually it's going to compress and explode. And, people become suicidal. People have breakdowns, psychotic splits, those things are real, and they are real because we don't address them.
right.
And I believe that that's what God would want. He wants healing. He said, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundant. An
Mhm.
abundant life starts with recognizing maybe I'm not okay, or, maybe I'm not in touch with how I'm feeling. I had a lady come and she was like, I'm sleeping a lot and, I just feel sad and I don't know what's wrong with me and I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I said, but there's a reason why you're feeling that way.
Right.
Well, what is it? I said, you have to discover what it is. I can help you discover it, but you got to be willing to take a look at what those reasons are.
That's the key. You got to
Yeah.
do.
Well, we have been almost 2 hours. Oh, sorry, 3 hours. And I, I don't know, but I think that this conversation has been awesome. And I want to say that, we have gone on this journey. And it's good. This is Inga Rose. What about singing Love Me When It's Hard? Love me when it's hard. When the sun don't shine. the morning low. Pretty nice song.
Playlist.
When I ain't smiling,
I have to put this in my
like
playlist.
you used to know. Yeah, I love her style. When I lose my way and I feel unsure, tell me you still here. Tell me you still sure.
Yeah, I can take this.
Don't just want your love when it's all going right. I need you the most in the middle of the night. Love me when it's hard, not just when it's easy. Stay right where you are, even when it's heavy. Love me when I'm low, when I'm falling apart. If you really love me when it's hard. Don't need perfect days, don't need picture smiles. I need someone who stay when it's rough for a while. When I don't feel strong, when I lose control, don't walk out on me, just hold me close. Not just for the highs, not just for the lies. Be the one that stays through the darkest nights. Love me when it's hard, oh, not just when it's easy. Stay right where you are, even when it's heavy. Love me when I'm low, when I'm losing heart. If you really love me when it's hard. Stay, don't walk away.
The psychology of those lyrics,
You're muffled.
Can you hear me?
Say again.
I was saying just the psychology of those lyrics.
Yes.
Leads to a whole nother conversation.
It sums up everything that we talked about in it. And I remember when Black couples, just speaking about African Americans and their counterparts, when they were close like that, when they could feel the passion and they would go there, you know what I mean? It was worth it to them. Because you had that one person, and it reminds me of my grandparents, When it's easy.
Here's the drink that flushes the sugar out of your veins and makes poor circulation.
Yeah, it's always a commercial.
Right. On that one.
No, but it is a good song.
Yes, it is. And who's it by?
Inga Rose.
Inga, Inga.
Rose.
Okay.
She's amazing. She's got quite a few of them. I'm like, whoa, girl. Young girl, too. But she seems to have an understanding of rhythm and blues and that whole blues vibe. I'm very impressed because I haven't seen anybody in that generation that gets it, But she does. And that's heavy music, not that pop stuff or the stuff they do where
right there. Generation of music gap.
Oh my goodness! You notice there's a song where Shawn Mendes, he does, I can treat you better than he can, this, that, and the other, but it's more like there's no soul to it. It's like they're repeating what they think they heard from another generation, but not really in depth. Like this girl feels it, you can feel it in her music.
Right.
And I think when I was younger, I liked pop music and all that, but as I got older, I have an appreciation for jazz and blues and the rhythm of things.
Right.
Because everything in life has a rhythm.
Well, as I've gotten older, I've gained an appreciation for my bed.
Yes.
And my
it's about that time.
Sorry.
Well, for hanging with me and our GCPR family, Mr. Ken Jenkins. We are looking forward to your movies. Those of you that have not seen them, go see them. And we are looking forward to part 3 and 4, as well as this new movie you're working on called The Dress. So I would have to say, you know, Pastor Gio wants you to know that we appreciate you hanging with us. It's been 3 hours. It's grueling. It's midnight. It's that witching hour. And from my heart to your home, thank you and God bless you. And if no one has told you that they love you today, I do very much. God bless you, family.
God bless. Peace and love.
Peace and love.